Kalyan is just minding his business, watching the royal knights train, when their commander strolls over and tells him to beat it. He says the prince has been a nuisance all night, just standing there like a creep. Kalyan's maid steps forward and says, "Hey, you're talking to a prince." But the commander doesn't care. He calls Kalyan a useless, ugly loser who can't even get a girlfriend and is getting in the way of their training. But then, the commander gets a look from the boy's eyes that he never expected, a fierce and brutal gaze that doesn't belong to a 14-year-old. The air grows heavy. The soldiers start walking over to see what's happening. They see the third prince, the one everyone considers a useless joke, and they immediately relax. But then the boy reaches up, snaps a dry branch from a tree above him, and tells the commander that his knights are trash. Their training is garbage. The soldiers aren't being trained for strength, they're just being treated like children, and wasting their time. The commander is obviously insulted and about to curse the boy out, but in the blink of an eye, the prince is behind him. The commander, Yahello, barely manages to raise his sword, knowing that if he hadn't, he'd be dead. He just blocked a fatal blow from a stick. The boy smiles. Then, he lets go of the branch, and the commander's sword flies out of his hand. He was just disarmed by a dry twig in front of all his men. The boy says he's impressed by the commander's lack of skill, unable to even defend himself against a useless person. Yahello drops to his knees and begs for forgiveness. While his men are still stunned, their commander is on the ground, groveling before the prince nobody respected. Alright, so here's the deal. This guy's real name is Baron. He used to be a king, the ruler of a nation called Sakurai. He fought a war against the Kias kingdom over an artifact called the Axis of Time, a thing that can literally rewind history. And Kias, they burned everything to the ground. Baron lost it all to the thugs from Kias, cornered by enemy mages with nothing but a sword and one arm. They torch my poor dude. And then, he wakes up, not in the afterlife, but in a soft bed, surrounded by servants in the royal palace of Kias, the very kingdom that destroyed him. Yes, our guide is in the empire of the people who wiped the floor with his crew. He's ready to burn this place down from the inside, and kill everyone in sight, because he's in the body of Kalyan, the third prince. The problem is, this kid is the weakest, most pathetic, and hated member of the royal family. At least he's got this one maid, who I thought was a girl at first, but turns out to be just a very pretty boy. Shortly after, our guy is eating and relaxing, contemplating his new life. But in this house, all three princes eat together by the king's order. When a dude named Planche, who apparently thinks he's in one piece with a coat draped over his shoulders at 7 a.m. walks in, our boy, who used to just bow his head, now looks him straight in the eye and says, "What's up?" Planche, being the gentleman he is, suddenly grabs a knife and flings it at our pretty boy servant, aiming to pierce his skull. But our guy catches it mid-air like it's nothing. He walks up next to him and says, "Be careful, buddy. Next time, it might end up in your face." The older brother is just stunned. I just got roasted by the biggest piece of trash in this place. Now, things aren't all smooth sailing, because something almost went very wrong. When the knife came flying, he almost instinctively used his aura. The reflexes of an aura warrior who spent his life on the battlefield nearly blew his cover in a dining room. But then he felt something unexpected, a sharp pain in his chest. Not from the knife, but from within. He checks, and what he finds changes everything. 3 mana circles around his heart. This body isn't just that of a weak prince, it's the body of a mage. 3 circles already form. That's an extraordinary talent, but it's also almost a curse. Our guy has spent his whole life wielding heavy swords, and now he has to cast spells. That's a problem, because every time he tries to use mana, his chest feels like it's being crushed. His body is losing weight rapidly. He can only run 3 laps around the palace lake before nearly collapsing. His nose starts bleeding randomly. The royal tailor, who measures him regularly, says he's getting thinner and thinner. A body with 3 mana circles and the blessing of the royal dragon's bloodline should be healing constantly. It should be getting stronger, not deteriorating. But it's happening, because this boy is being poisoned. And it's not a small dose. Whatever is in his system is so potent that if he didn't have the dragon bloodline burning it off 24/7, he would have been dead long ago. This isn't some random assassination attempt. Someone has been poisoning our guy day in and day out. But who? Our boy remembers that in the original timeline, this kid died at 15. They said he tried to poison the queen, and then hanged himself. What if that story was always a lie? Speaking of suspects, that's when our guy smells someone approaching. Literally, like a dog. This person is Silas, the current queen. Judging by her eye color, she must be his stepmother. And oh boy, she is perfect for the stepmom role with those thick, seductive lips. And of course, She walks right up to our boy and says he's looking very mature and healthy lately. Baidu drops a line on her and says, I haven't grown much. In the future, you'll see just how much more I can grow. Yeah, that's the direction I like my stories to go. Words that make the air heavy. But Viscount says he almost didn't recognize him since he usually never shows his face. He's sure to become a very tall man. That's when the queen cuts him off. Who would guess? The Viscount is a hound dog, just like the rumors said. The queen asks why Blanche didn't tell her about the horse that wouldn't obey him. It would have been better if he'd reported it, but Blanche says she already knew. He says he lost control of the reins, and her son says the horse is useless. He gets up and leaves the table immediately, leaving his damn mother fuming. 3 weeks later, it's time for the king's birthday celebration. The king is basically his wife's doormat, just like everything else in that palace. The commoners are excited about the festivals. Everyone wants to see the princes. While they're getting the boy ready, the tailor becomes very concerned. Blood starts dripping from Callion's nose. All the servants panic at the sudden nosebleed. The butler calls for Gus to stop the bleeding. The prince says it's nothing, just that he didn't sleep well, but since the tailor measures him regularly, he points out that the boy has lost even more weight. Callion tries to change the subject, saying he's been exercising too much, which is why he's lost so much weight. As soon as the tailor leaves, the butler quietly asks if today is the day. Whatever is happening, before rumors about Callion's health spread, he needs to see Ellen, not Moss. Due to a delay in the king's schedule, he'll have to meet each son one by one. Our boy has no time to waste and wishes his father would just talk to everyone at once. A private meeting was not what he was expecting. King Ryan is reading documents, and the prince introduces himself, but the king acts like he doesn't even notice, as if he's tuned everything out. That's incredibly rude, Callion thinks, until the king tells him to sit. The king asks generic questions, and says his son looks fine. Suddenly, it all makes sense to Callion. Now he knows why the king wanted to see his sons alone. This way, he's actually saving time because he doesn't have to talk or ask anything. What a messed up family. A father who doesn't care. Indifferent brothers. A great place to be. Blanche has just arrived, and he's already drunk, with zero manners. The one who cares most about that meeting is the queen, who has enough power to keep her husband under her thumb. And in the midst of all these people, someone wants the prince dead. It's time for him to find out who the killer is. For the celebration, the prince shows up with a different look. His presence has already overshadowed Prince Blanche, who is just a drunk. The nobles are buzzing about it, starting rumors. Callion finally enters the hall, leaving all those well-bred nobles impressed. The rumors are true. The black-haired, red-eyed prince looks just like the legendary Sifanian. He's cut his hair. His face is completely revealed, and he's even wearing a crimson brooch. It's a silent declaration that he's done hiding. The butler approaches to ask him something. He wants to know why everyone is staring. He even thinks it might be because the prince is dressed too nicely. Callion knows those jewels are drawing attention. It was all the tailor's doing. The butler's family is also from Kius, but from a small inland town. The prince asks if they ever come to the capital, and the butler says they would need an invitation. Since the prince is getting too personal, it seems the butler is about to snap, but he manages to change the subject. The prince is waiting for the right moment because there's someone there he wants to meet. He asks if the butler knows why the place is called Siegfried Hall. It was named after the first patriarch of that lineage, one of the great heroes. They have been loyal to the royal family for 500 years, protecting that territory. In his past life, the prince loved hearing that story, and the man he wants to meet is in the middle of the hall, Duke Siegfried, who looks incredibly powerful, with long-standing traditions of loyalty. That's the kind of man the prince likes. Using a bit of mana, he tries to see if the man is sharp, and he gets spotted immediately. The test went just as expected. The butler notices the duke is looking at the prince. He's one of the 5 great master swordsmen on the continent. For now, the prince will act like nothing happened. In the middle of the hall, the king thanks his guests for coming. Callion is outside with his butler. The boy has tamed that stubborn horse, discovering it's actually gentle and intelligent. Now they need to get to the main gate. Someone is being blocked from entering. Callion quickly realizes what's happening. It's the man he's been looking for. Ellen doesn't have an invitation to the party, so he's being held outside. The guards don't seem to know he's an important mage. Still, they block him. Ellen thinks guests are treated based on their appearance. The prince realizes the mage is doing this on purpose, as if he's looking for an excuse not to enter those lands, already prepared to leave. The butler says they can't follow him because they'd be breaking the king's order. Callion can't lose track of the mage, so he tells the butler to hold the guards, then spurs his horse toward Ellen. The knights order the prince to stop immediately. The king's orders forbid anyone from leaving, but the boy jumps over them on his black horse, heading out of the fortress. Now, the butler has to do something to stop the guards because he received a clear command to prevent that from happening. Full of energy, he tells the knights to stop at once because the prince has Siegfried's permission. At last, the butler has revealed his true identity. His name is Soyen, the eldest son of Duke Siegfried. Later, someone is having a good laugh about what happened. It's the butler's father, impressed by his son's cleverness. When he left their lands, he was just a child. It was the right decision. The boy was afraid the relationship between the duke and the king might get tense. But Siegfried is sure nothing will happen because the king won't ask any questions. He overthinks everything. If the prince gets help from that family, he certainly won't be punished. There's a delicate balance of power there, so it will all be brushed aside as if it never happened. Whatever reason drove the young prince outside, Ellen noticed he was being followed as if he were about to be criticized. So he asks what the third prince of Kiss is doing, chasing him. Kalyan already knew that once he reached the 7th circle, the aging process would slow down. The boy says it's late and asks if the mage is really leaving. The mage says when he tried to open that door, there was a huge barrier. That bothers Kalyan a little because the mage doesn't seem very interested in staying. Kalyan says he tried the wrong door because there was one already open for him. The mage realizes he's being called out and, instead of hearing excuses, finds himself dealing with a very sharp prince. One who doesn't act like he's only 14. That's when the mage notices something. He steps closer, genuinely concerned. The moment he touches the prince's hand, energy begins to surge, causing the prince to feel a sharp pain in his chest. The mage's mana flows through the prince's body. The contact becomes so intense that Kalyan has to pull his hand back. The mage says that even if the door is closed, you can't completely block the wind. The boy's condition has been exposed to this Grandmaster. Kalyan says there's a limit to how much mana he can use, but that's not his real problem. The question is whether the mage has realized it yet. Ellen continues to look at him with fascination. Although they are descendants of dragons, he despises mages, and Ellen's presence has been completely ignored. But now he believes fate has brought him to this boy, so he asks why the prince wanted to see him. Kalyan knows he can't lie now, or he'll be caught. Very politely, he says he wanted to talk because he believes his life will soon be in danger. The third prince is hated by everyone. His existence is surrounded by enemies. Ellen puts a barrier around the two of them to block all sound. And he did it without any incantation. Rethinking, the mage asks what the boy's real goal is, to avoid what's coming or to eliminate the real problem. Kalyan says the priority is to stop worse things from happening for the time being. And if he has to take the throne to get what he wants, he will do it. Ellen seems to like that confidence. The young prince needs a teacher to achieve his goals. That is truly interesting. That's why the mage asks to be invited again. The prince kneels before him, introducing himself to his new master. With the mage's ego properly stroked, he has agreed to save the prince. Back with the butler, he asks his father if no one knows about his true identity because it would be a problem if it were leaked. Siegfried is very confident, but his son is still worried. He wants to know how Leah is doing. His father says she's doing a great job handling the family's internal affairs, the position the boy gave up. Whenever he wants to stop playing a butler, he can come back anytime. Realizing he won't see his son for a long time, the Duke listens, as the boy says they'll see each other again in 3 months. Siegfried takes that as his son leaving his current position. The boy says that soon a young master will turn 15. His father asks if he knows what their family name means. They are known as the Elephants of Kias. They never wanted the throne, but they are extremely powerful. They are the kings of beasts, and no one can touch them. After saying that, Siegfried starts smiling, saying their name carries real power. Then he tells his son to do whatever he wants, which makes the boy really happy. He says next time he shouldn't worry him so much. The butler adjusts his clothes to return. Very formal. He says goodbye to his father, saying they'll see each other again soon. Siegfried thinks his son is so stubborn. Typical of the family. He is also thinking about what the prince did earlier. If he could do something like that, he's definitely grown a lot. Now the Duke wants to know what the third prince is planning. The next day, a carriage draws everyone's attention. It has a crest with 7 roses and a silver staff. People want to know why that family is visiting Kias, but the reason seems pretty clear. They have a good relationship with the king, and the rumors are spreading. Ellen has just stepped out of the carriage. His young disciple did it. The night before, they had talked about this exact thing. The mage needed to arrive at 9 am. Competing with the prince's family's influence won't be easy. It's time to stir up the nobility. The servants of that house welcomed the mage politely, and said the king was already waiting. In the meeting, the king was surprised by the mage's presence, and Ellen asked for a place to stay. To compete with his wife's power, the king knew that having that mage on his side would be very useful. It was surprising that he showed up there first, and that made the king suspicious. The mage said that the night before he found a little black cat with red eyes. He realized it was very smart and decided to teach it a few things, but he still had nowhere to stay. The king asks what he's going to teach, and the answer couldn't be clearer. Magic. But the environment also needs to help that little cat progress. So the owner of those lands needs to contribute as well. A little uneasy, the king asks if the mage can really do that. Kalyan will be his disciple. No one can stop that. The king decides to cooperate. The place is already a mess. One more thing won't make it worse. Still, the king is curious, because he heard the third son was nothing special. That surprises the mage. Even the boy's health condition is unusual because it's hard to pinpoint the cause. Worse, the king only talks about things he's heard, as if he doesn't even know his own son. So the mage asks if the father knows the young prince's height, something basic. From the king's silence, the mage immediately realizes he can't answer. Then he tells him, attention can be poison, and indifference can be medicine. But in this case, saying, "You're busy" is just an excuse. The king is annoyed, but decides to let it go because the mage doesn't yet know how to behave as the boy's teacher. He says, it's ridiculous to have to explain this, but he cares a lot about the young prince, stressing that he's particularly extraordinary. Just as their conversation is about to be interrupted, a magic barrier is summoned. Ellen tells the king to pay attention. The boy looks sick. Even the clothes he wears have been hastily mended because he's losing weight. He can barely get up on his own when he wakes up. If the king keeps doing nothing but watching, he will lose something he claims is very, very precious. It's almost lunchtime, and the young prince still hasn't left his room for breakfast. The butler says he'll handle it and brings some tea. Our protagonist is still in bed in pain, even in his sleep. Seeing that, the butler assumes the day before must have been very tiring. That's when the maid shows up, and sees the boy still hasn't woken up. The mage's presence flusters the butler, but then he's utterly horrified when Ellen appears out of nowhere. Siegfried tries to stop the mage from getting closer. He tells him to give our protagonist some time because his health is fragile, but the mage recognized that boy immediately. They met a few years ago, and he knew he was looking at the little elephant. It seems some people know who the butler's father is. The butler swears his disguise was perfect, but he was still found out. Our protagonist finally wakes up, but he doesn't know how many hours he's rested. He's told he has a visitor. Kalyan sees who the mage is, and the boy gets a little gift from him, a few pills he has to take every day. Ellen says the boy is facing two problems. The first is that he can't control his mana. The second is that his body is losing weight too fast. Kalyan is impressed by his master's observation skills. Ellen asks if the boy really has the power of the blessing. Kalyan says yes, because of it, he should be recovering faster and be gifted in magic, but somehow his regenerative ability seems to be messed up. More and more curious, Ellen asks if the boy has ever found that strange. With healing ability combined with magical power, in theory, the boy's heart should be very strong. His master agrees. The blessing hasn't disappeared, and his heart has no problems. In fact, his regenerative ability is being used constantly, just somewhere else. That statement completely shocks our protagonist. He immediately realizes he's being poisoned, and if it weren't for his blessing, he would have been dead long ago. Fighting against such a potent poison is pushing his body to its limits. So, using mana becomes extremely difficult. Our protagonist knew that originally the boy was the victim of a murder, but he was being poisoned before that, an incredibly sophisticated plan. Knowing all this fills him with rage. Ellen notices the negative intent radiating from him. A 14-year-old shouldn't be capable of that. Kalyan believes that little pill is the antidote. His master says he made it in a hurry, but it will be enough. Our protagonist starts thinking about what would happen if he took it while continuing to ingest the poison. That worries his master, because then the treatment wouldn't be effective. Keeping the poison in his body would be very dangerous, but the boy already has an idea of who the culprit is. It has to be the tea he drinks every morning. Since he drinks it in front of everyone, it would be easy to confirm he's had it. Perhaps the boy discovered that in his previous life, and that's what accelerated his assassination. Things are very different now. Kalyan needs to find out what's happening, while keeping everything a secret. His master asks if that's the only option. The boy needs to confirm the tea is the source of the poison. That could put his servants in danger, because the culprit does it regularly, confident they'll never be caught. Knowing the butler's true identity, the master says he'll be safe, but he understands Callion's fears and wants to know what the next steps will be. In some mysterious place, a disgusting old man says that to use his trump card, he needs to receive something. The next day, Callion wants his master to go out with him. Some servants have come looking for Prince Planche because the queen wants to see him. She says the boy is very late, but he doesn't seem to care at all. Drunk again, the young man drinks some water and tells his mother to just say what she wants to say and go. The queen has heard our protagonist has gotten a teacher, Dylan, the 7th circle mage. The news is spreading among the nobles. Planche couldn't care less. The queen says he should be grateful for the investment she's made. It's time to prepare. A lot of eyes will be on the heir from now on, so he better not disappoint them. Planche gets angry and throws a glass on the floor. Despite injuring himself, he shoos the servants out. Now he's getting more and more frustrated with our boy, the source of his frustrations. Due to the king's birthday celebration, the royal procession is touring the capital, and his children are with him, much to the excitement of the people. Callion is the one the crowd wants to see the most. The butler asks if he's feeling alright, at least his face looks a little healthier. Callion says he rested well. Thanks to the antidote he's taking, breathing is much easier, and the pain in his heart is gone. Unfortunately, the schedule for that day will be very long, which worries the butler a lot. Still, the protagonist is well enough to meet his subjects. In the middle of the crowd, a man tries to hide. Our protagonist notices those mysterious figures. He would never forget them. They were the ones from his past life who, on that night, sacrificed themselves to protect him. It's scary, but a hooded man has disappeared into the crowd. Our protagonist tries to follow on his horse, but the butler stops him. Callion tries to explain that he needs to follow them, but they're already gone, and it would look very bad to abandon the procession at that moment. One thing he's sure of, he'll see his friend again. At the end of the route, a nobleman welcomes the king and his family. He says he has prepared a performance to celebrate their arrival. It's Baron Miller, the man responsible for organizing this trip and all the stress our boy has been through. In his previous life, a horse ride was organized by that baron, and one of the king's sons was injured, leading to Miller's execution by hanging. It's a shame, because he seems like a pretty decent side character. The hall was prepared to receive the guests. Our boy has spotted the chandelier that is about to fall during an event organized for the king himself. It's strange that the knights didn't check for safety, but thinking about the commander, Callion realizes he shouldn't expect much from them. He decides he'll give that side character a chance to live. When the baron approaches him, Callion says he's worried about that chandelier and orders it to be checked. Apparently, that message has left the nobleman completely baffled. The horse performance is taking place in the arena. The nobleman is like a child sitting next to the king. He doesn't want to miss this opportunity for anything. But then he notices our protagonist's expression and starts to think he really should check the ceiling. When he inspects the place, the baron finds a heavily worn-out rope. If it weren't for the young prince's warning, something terrible could have happened. But he was warned about what was to come. It was as if our protagonist knew the future. Callion notices the nobleman acted very wisely. The question is why. Prison had enough guards in that area to cause a big commotion. That alcoholic prince says the nobleman doesn't know his place. The performance continues in the arena. Looking at our protagonist, the drunk prince says he's disgusted by his blood. Everyone there heard it, and that only motivates our protagonist more because he never thought the Mad King from his past life would turn out to be such a loser. It's time to find out how far the queen will go in the situation. She didn't like what happened either, because she had warned her son not to be a fool. Only then, after looking at her own son, did she understand he had done it on purpose. But that day was special. Many nobles were present. It was time to make a decision. The show for the nobles finally ended. The accident that should have happened was prevented. The queen remained very quiet, as if she hadn't planned anything at all. Maybe that accident really wasn't part of her plot. That was also debated in his past life. It could have been motivated by external forces. It seemed designed to be discovered. A direct attack on the royal family. Brzen benefited the most from the aftermath. As they were leaving, our protagonist asks the butler where that baron's wealth comes from. He learns the man owns a diamond mine. If the baron were removed from the board, Brzen would also thrive in that market. Our protagonist is putting the pieces together, but he decides to observe a little more. He thinks about putting a little pressure on the baron since our boy saved his life. So, he tells the butler to cancel any plans after the show. He says the comments he heard from his own brother were very harsh, and he was shocked. That's why he won't be able to participate in the rest of the schedule. The king is in his office thinking about what happened. Since the mage scolded him directly, he started remembering the boy's mother, her final moments, until the servants interrupt, announcing the queen's arrival. A maid says she'll bring them tea. The queen notices someone has visited before her. The king stops the tea from being brought, saying the queen will be leaving soon. Getting straight to the point, he asks what brought her here. She asks what will happen to Brizen after that event, but she's worried about her son's behavior. It could harm his position in the line of succession. She praises the day's festival and suggests the baron should be rewarded. The king realizes she already has something in mind. Smiling, she mentions Brizen's exclusive right to supply horses to the royal family. To the king, she's giving up a very important asset, which only reinforces what Ellen said. Ellen had told him that the queen wouldn't give up the royal guard for it, because she wasn't desperate, but she would hand over something valuable, and the king should act as if he didn't expect it. After hearing the offer, the king says he will include Planche in the next event. That makes the queen incredibly happy. That night, the king attends the dinner with his son to reward the baron for what he did that day. The nobles already know it was a deal between the king and the queen. Because of Planche's actions, and because the protagonist's reputation is growing, his room is flooded with gifts. His rival's influence is shrinking, but he doesn't need that kind of offer except for the baron's gift. He'll donate everything else. Soon, the butler finds the baron's gift a very flashy necklace made of red stones. It's so big it looks like it was made for a horse. That puzzles our boy, and he learns that when the baron approached, the butler had mentioned that our boy was fond of the black horse. That's why he got the necklace. It must be the baron testing his intentions. If he accepts this gift, he'll get another one later. Callian thinks the man doesn't understand the value of his own life. Those jewels aren't enough, so he decides to send a message. He wants to know the value of the necklace, because he's going to buy it. The butler doesn't understand the offer, and our boy says he's not fascinated by it. Actually, a very sinister plant has caught his attention. It was a gift from the Mages Association, and our boy finds that really strange, but it must be valuable because it came with a letter of explanation. When the plant dies, it will release pollen. Our boy seems to understand why it's important. He says the gift will stay in his room, because he has a very interesting idea he wants to try. Then, he intentionally spills his tea, and pretends to burn his hand. The butler calls for some maids to clean it up. A bit of tea spilled on the plant, making the butler worry the plant might be affected by the tea. The protagonist says it's fine. It's not like the tea is poison. A comment that was too specific, and it scared the maid. With his master by his side, our boy thanks him for the help he has received. Thanks to the antidote's effect, Ellen notices our protagonist looks much healthier and happier. Ellen wanted to take a walk like that too. It was his first time in a while. Callian asks if the king would allow it, but the king probably doesn't even know what's happening since he's always busy. Our boy rushes out, leaving a very worried butler behind. The mage asks if he's still taking the pills. Callian promises he's doing exactly as he was told. The person delivering the poison is very nervous, because the plant was used as bait. That surprises the maid because it was an interesting strategy. The gift our boy received was used brilliantly. Now they need to split up again, because the protagonist wants to do this alone. The Mages Association is on a nearby street. That's where the master will be ready to help him. Soon they'll meet again. Once they've done what they needed to do, some blacksmiths are working hard. Our boy has a dagger for self-defense. It will be useful from now on if he gets attacked. What he needs now is more information. In his past life, some agents were sent to the field for that purpose. Trained assassins who took on such missions were dispatched through the King of Sakraya. In his past life, our protagonist also did the same thing. On that dark street, he is completely unprotected, and he knows the assassins from his kingdom are very competent. Some drunk men are approaching him. He must be careful not to reveal his true identity, or he might trigger an attack sooner than expected. The truth is, his strange appearance has attracted them, so he has to be even more careful. He finally enters a very special shop, much larger than he expected. Inside, the shopkeeper asks if the boy is looking for a carrier pigeon, but he says he doesn't need those birds. They look like they're sleeping peacefully. It even seems they've come from far away and are exhausted, and there's no better place for them than that shop. More and more curious, the old man asks what brought the young man here. Callian says he needs to feed the birds. In the blink of an eye, he's attacked. The blade whizzes past his hood, and the old man says he hasn't been selling birds lately, so he's being very careful and suspicious. Callian quickly realizes this is no ordinary old man. It would be very difficult to fight him in that situation. So, our boy decides to talk instead. He says the birds he's looking for have left their nests in a distant place, so they need food. They haven't been sold yet. Birds is a code name for secret agents responsible for gathering information. Even Sakurai's agents don't know everyone in the field, so information doesn't get leaked. The old man asks if the boy is someone's bird. Kalyan even considers using his old father's name to pretend he's a bird on job, claiming he's there on behalf of Nebula. That greatly surprises the old man. Everything has gone well so far. Our boy asks for some food because this bird needs to get to work. The old man immediately tells him to follow. He leads our boy into a secret room and says the young man must be a rookie and that he should remember the old man's code name, White Eagle. Our protagonist says he's the Red Swan. It's time for him to get the information. For each piece of information, he has to hand over an item, payment up front. Our boy didn't expect to be charged before even saying what he was looking for. It could be a trap, but the old man says the price is fixed. After paying, he receives the information he wanted. Looking through that scroll, the Red Swan starts to wonder if it's really accurate. But based on what he asked for, that's what the old man had to give him. Before leaving the shop, he's warned to be careful because the place is quite ruthless. Our protagonist agrees, thinking there's nothing there more dangerous than the White Eagle himself. On his way back to the castle, our boy sees some hooded men. He needs to cross that bridge, but he's been stopped. He asks what that means. One of the men apologizes and says he must wait because the dead are making their final journey. Only then does he realize it's a funeral rite. Our boy dismounts his horse to show respect. The funeral customs in that country are very different. They place red flowers in the river so the dead don't get lost. In his past life, they did it with white flowers placed on graves. They bloomed at night, a sign that the dead would never meet the living. Our boy starts to think about that. Did anyone in his past life mourn him, or did time turn back before that happened? Maybe he is the dead one who has lost his way. Someone thanks him for stopping to pay his respects. Now he can continue. Back on his horse, he pulls the hood from his face and says he will pray for that soul. And the man who stopped him has recognized his face. The man's companions see he's distracted and ask why. It's arson, and he says he will remember the Prince of Sakurai very well, because that's what happened in his past life. Answering his companions, he says the young man seems like a good person. On the way, Kalyan sees some signs with Sifanian's name and thinks it's a bit over the top, especially the last one that looks like a bar. The stories from his past life about that city were true, about the followers of Sifanian. A bald man is about to take our boy to a more private place, but Kalyan says that's not where he wants to go. He wants to go to the 4th floor of that building. The bald man is immediately surprised and quickly offers to show him the way. Kalyan is now in an empty hall. He sees a small object hanging on the wall. When he was with the White Eagle, he only asked for one piece of information where illegal business happens in Kias. After he activates that strange object, a secret door opens in the wall. There's a staircase leading underground where our boy will gather more information. Some people are gambling down there, but that's not what he's looking for. Deeper inside, illegal fights take place. People cheer wildly for their favorite fighters. The first fight ends. The winner is stone-faced, while the loser's body is dragged away. The bets are paid. The smell of blood fills the place. It's where ordinary people cast aside their humanity for brutality. For our boy, it's disgusting and pathetic. He's approached for an entrance fee. At that moment, Kalyan notices a silver-haired girl. She looks like she's Miyu, and she's trying to guide him to where he should go next. He notices the tips of her ears have been cut, and she doesn't look comfortable in those clothes. Around the necks of those girls is a tracking device, so they can't escape. The mute girl gestures again, pointing to the number 27. It seems she wants him to place a bet now, so he blends into the crowd until he can get what he came for. The rules there are simple. If you win a bet, you get your money fast. Our boy has made a small fortune. Some men start talking about it. It's time for a special match against an undefeated fighter. So far, his opponent is a rookie. This is the one Kalyan wanted to find. The one who, in his past life, said he was trapped in a place where he had to fight to survive until his sister died. The Night, very. But for now, he's still a slave, a gladiator, the real treasure Kalyan came to find. Without hesitation, Kalyan bets everything he has on that fire, stunning the mute girl. A risky bet that shocks the onlookers, who think the boy must be crazy, and they're not wrong. So far, Jury hasn't won anything. A veteran gambler says what our boy did was reckless. It's not worth betting everything on someone who's never won. But our boy doesn't budge. He tells the mute girl to make sure the bet is placed. Then, the veteran gambler did what his conscience told him to. warning the rookie that the match would be a total massacre. Even inside the cage, Kiri realizes what has happened. The undefeated fighter says that Crazy Better is about to lose everything. The chains holding them have been unlocked. The fight has just begun, and Kiri has been forced on the defensive against devastating blows. Each block hurts almost as much as a direct hit. The gladiator lands a blow to Kiri's abdomen, causing him to cough up blood from the impact. Now, the protagonist starts to worry. Without a sword, he knows Kiri isn't that dangerous, but he believes in the potential of that mighty fighter. The gray-haired knight's blows aren't fast enough. He's being slowly crushed. There's nothing to do in that beatdown. The final blow is aimed at his face until the protagonist yells at Kiri that he shouldn't expose his shoulder during his opponent's attack. The gladiator listens, manages to dodge a blow aimed at his skull, and finds a good opening to counterattack, crushing the thug's ribs. If that guy's bones weren't made of rubber, they would have definitely cracked. Kiri turns into a dentist, pulling teeth without anesthesia. To everyone's astonishment, Kiri gets his first victory. No one can explain how it happened. It shouldn't have been possible. While desperate screams echo from those who lost money, Kiri looks at our boy. Galleon can't hide his joy. Then, a very suspicious bald man says someone wants to talk to our boy and tells him to come along. In a private room, someone says our boy has real talent. He turned 3 coins into a total of 6, 0, and that's a big problem for a bookie. The man doesn't want to pay him. Galleon thought they would offer some kind of deal, but they're dumber than they look. The gangster asks what the boy can offer in this situation. Our protagonist says that if he removes his hood, things will get very bad for him. The gangster doubts the threat. It's time to rip that hood off by force, but one of the gangster's hands is violently stabbed through. That makes our boy ask what's going on. He thought he was talking to dangerous criminals. That's when they realize they're dealing with someone truly insane. To ease the tension, our boy says he doesn't care about the money. He'd rather take the gladiator Kiri home. But the gangster isn't happy about that because the slave has started to bring in money. However, within seconds, he realizes that if he doesn't agree, things will get ugly. He starts to think it would be easy to see what that boy can do by using his men. With an even more destructive cut, the protagonist makes it clear who's in charge there. He says he's willing to take both the coins and even the man's life if he gets in his way. It's time for the gangster to decide. After that aura attack, the answer was clear. He orders his men to bring Kiri to the room immediately. What he doesn't know is that it was just a bluff. Our boy couldn't repeat that attack. His weak body wouldn't be able to handle it. A thug says there's a big problem. Kiri won't leave unless his sister goes with him. Our protagonist remembers the rest of the story. His knight had lost something precious in that place. Galleon starts to act impatient. That makes the gangster move faster, saying everything will be prepared so they can leave as soon as possible. But our boy holds out his hand menacingly. He wants his entrance fee back, the money he paid to get in. Now they're back in the dark alley, and Kiri is a bit nervous. Coincidentally, his sister is the mute girl. They thank our protagonist for his help, but they can't understand why he helped them. Galleon gives his cloak to the girl and tells them not to doubt him anymore, because he has no ill intentions. That's when his face is recognized, the face of the third prince. Kiri apologizes for doubting someone so important. Our boy tells him not to bow like that because they don't have to do it in front of him. These two siblings have elven blood. They are half-breeds, and their lives have been sealed. Taking the opportunity, our boy says that exposing a shoulder like that is something a sword-fighting beginner would do. Now the question is whether Kiri wants to become a knight. The young man says he wants to be a sword that can protect everything he cares about, not a knight. Our boy says the first step is to be his shield. If he wants to continue down that path, he should come find him, and he gives the young man a sword. Kiri still doesn't know why he's being given something so important. Galleon, smiling, says he needs a good sword. It's time for him to pay back everything he received in his past life. Ellen is reviewing the most recent events and how our boy saved Baron Miller's life. The prince knew the chandelier would fall. Our boy comes to see his master. Ellen asks if he got into trouble because some of his clothes were missing. The young man says something happened, but it wasn't a fight. His master understands it must have been a difficult task. Galleon admits it was a very long day. He found his knight and set a trap to find out who was poisoning him. Still, he's really worried. Maybe it's because he did too much in too short a time. With the help of magic, Ellen starts pouring tea. Our boy says it finally feels like a mage's office. His master asks if he was expecting some mysterious soup made from monster meat. And to be honest, Galleon was expecting something more impressive. The room is very ordinary, and the unsheathed dagger is a strange decoration. but the boy quickly realizes what kind of tool it is. Ellen asks if the prince knows why it's there because it shouldn't be in his room. With a simple movement of his finger, the dagger starts to move, heading straight for our boy. A little blood splatters on the floor. Ellen notices that even with a damaged body, our boy still has good reflexes. He defended himself, but he overexerted himself. It was a magical tool created by Sefanian. It copies your opponent's hidden weapon. Basically, it's a warning. Our boy realizes the attack was just a bluff. Ellen has confirmed with his own eyes that besides knowing how to use a sword, the boy can also use aura. From the first time he saw him, he was sure their meeting was strange, but more ridiculous things kept happening. The boy wasn't what they thought they knew about him. When he learned he was being poisoned, instead of being scared, he was filled with rage. And after the incident with the Baron, it was time to tell his master the truth. Ellen used healing magic on the boy's body. His master probably suspected his identity, but it was more likely he was trying to believe him. So, our protagonist says he is not Kalyan. His real name is Baron of Sakraya. Oh man, I didn't expect him to reveal that he broke the #1 rule of every regression story. Now, the two of them talk more about the artifact called the Axis of Time. It seems the real Kalyan is no longer alive. The professor believes our protagonist isn't sure. He still feels the presence of someone else. He wasn't sure before, because it was too confusing. Ellen remembers the first time they met. Our boy said he wanted something more than the throne. Now Ellen wants to know what that is. Kalyan reveals he wants to prevent the war from happening. He doesn't know why Planche was after the Axis of Time. But if the root of the problem remains, history will repeat itself. Ellen asks if our boy wants to act on his own motivations or for his brother, Chase. They need to figure that out. Chase is the sole heir of that other kingdom. There is no one named Baron in this reality. That information shocks our boy. He didn't expect that he wouldn't exist in this timeline, or anywhere, which is silly, because he's existing right now. Still, the boy falls into a strange existential crisis, believing something went wrong, perhaps because of the artifact's power. Now, he tries to understand why he's in this body, as he feels the presence of the old Kalyan slowly fading. Our boy even wonders if someone has entered the body that used to be Baron's, and he comes to the conclusion that there can't be two versions of him in the same place, so he must have taken over the real Kalyan's body. His master says Chase is preparing to take the throne. The future of this reality is being changed. It's not the job of the third prince of Kias to worry about those things now, because Chase will follow his own story. Aaron realizes he shouldn't hold onto the past anymore. He understands his master's concern, but he will make one thing clear. His master's fears will not come true. Because when he woke up in that land, he had completely discarded everything that made Baron. Words so heavy they stunned Ellen. Now the protagonist asks his master if he's okay. After hearing all that, Ellen, though confused, doesn't understand his student's anxiety. And from the beginning, he has been allied with one person, our boy. Outside, Kalyan asks his master if he already knew about the Axis of Time. From his reaction, it seems he knew something. Ellen says something happened last year. Chase had asked him the same question. All he knows is that the artifact was not created by humans. And a month ago, he learned it had disappeared from the kingdom, probably on the day of our boy's regression. That information scares Kalyan a little. He doesn't know why the artifact could have disappeared, but that's not a question that can be answered now. However, there is one person who might have that answer. Someone the prince will meet soon. Ellen points to the statue of Sefanian, and our boy realizes his coming-of-age ceremony is approaching. Rosalita is the name of the event when members of the royal family have to find Sefanian's empty nest, and, inside it, speak with her will. But to do that, you have to get there alive, which means he needs to find out who is trying to poison him. Kalyan believes this alone is enough to catch someone. Back in his room, he goes to check on that plan. Despite the butler's worries, everything went exactly as the protagonist had planned. Now it's time to find something really cool. Heading straight for the terrace, the butler asks why they need to go out there since it's very cold outside. The flower he received as a gift. When it dies, its pollen spreads in the air, and very few people know it has that property. The tea was poured in a place where everyone could see it. Kalyan closely observed everyone's reaction. It was a deadly poison. Almost no one could survive it, and the plant should have definitely died. However, it was perfectly healthy, as if someone had switched the specimen. Finally, the butler understands what's happening. Pollen from that plant is drifting in the air. A trail is left showing where the plant might be hidden, and it will lead the protagonist straight to the culprit, pointing toward the Hestia Palace, where, coincidentally, the queen of that kingdom lies. The protagonist watches the rain fall through the window. The butler slowly approaches. The boy asks if he rested well, looking completely healthy. That stuns the butler. He's not used to being greeted like that in the morning. The boy says he woke up early. That's really unprecedented for the butler, and the boy is still closely watching the teacup. As he drinks, he notices it tastes different than usual. Silas has increased the dose of the poison. The boy asks if there are any events with all the nobles that we. The butler tells him there will be a conference next week, and right after that, a big party, the perfect day to stop drinking that poison tea. The protagonist takes the antidote right after drinking the tea, which makes the butler curious. He asks what it is, and the boy says it's just vitamins. Since his body has weakened, he should take them. Now, the butler becomes pensive, staring at the teacup. The whole thing makes him extremely uneasy. After what happened at the horse show, Blanche has stopped coming to breakfast. For the protagonist, that's great. It has removed obstacles from his schedule. Taking advantage of his second brother being there, Callian says that the flowers will soon bloom. A heavy silence falls between them, and the blonde-haired boy decides to leave. Later, the butler asks why the boy mentioned that. Callian says he saw some roses on a wall, and it reminded him that Randall used to grow roses. There was no hidden meaning behind it. Later that day, the protagonist trains a little more. His physical condition is getting worse, and he's sure that if he stops training, his body will collapse even faster. He still doesn't know how his master showed up there, but the master says he spoke with the king. That makes the boy say he has two questions. He needs the identities of two people. Nothing complicated for his master. The second favor is to investigate some nobles who might be involved in this, especially the Brizan family, which his master had anticipated. That's not hard either, but the boy is ordering his master around a lot. Callian says the poison is even more concentrated now. He has actually found the culprit. Even the master had suspected who it was. It must be hard to hide something like that from a great mage. And since it's an important issue, it's the perfect situation for Ellen to gain more influence. The mage thought he would be used as a shield, but the boy doesn't want that. He wants to use him as a weapon. He still remembers his past life, and the White Demon Corps was made up only of mages. In the future, Callian wants a battalion composed solely of that type of soldier. The master is curious, and says, mages are not knights, and they are very difficult to train. But the protagonist insists it's possible, which sends his master deep into thought. Ryan was ignored when he had that idea because everyone thought it was impossible. However, he did it. Still, he died shortly after under very suspicious circumstances. The Mage Corps actually became a military force used by Blanche. Things will be different now because the Brizan family won't be in the boy's way, and he wants to use the poison tea to negotiate with Queen Silas. Ellen wants to know how that will be done. All the boy can say is that it will happen soon. That state, and it makes the master uneasy. Pulling something hidden in his sleeve, the boy says it should be used when the queen makes a mistake. Then, the negotiations will begin. The infiltrated maids have increased the dose of the poison, but the queen is still angry. She has heard too many rumors, and they all make her extremely frustrated. Someone approaches the two of them. It's the queen's son, who is also a tool in her hands. He comes to tell her not to worry about it, but she says he's in no position to decide anything. Still, she continues to suffer. Blanche storms out, feeling useless. The queen sees her son as weak, and she will pave the way for him to become king in the future. On the day of the celebration at the palace, Kiri notices his sister woke up in a great mood. She's also very excited about what's to come, and using sign language, she says they are going to see the prince. The girl likes the protagonist, and is looking forward to the party that day. Callian is getting ready in his royal attire for the noble conference. There's 1 hour left before everything starts, and the protagonist has a request for his butler. It's time to deal with the tea that is being delivered to the weakest prince. The boy finally meets the queen. From now on, things will change. Outside, the butler is on his horse. He has been given 2 envelopes, one to deliver to Ellen, and one to the Mages Association. The first stop must be the association, and the butler starts to worry, because his lord will be going to the party alone. The boy says he'll handle it this way, telling the butler to stay calm. But it's easier said than done. Something similar has happened before. Even thinking that a catastrophe could become a reality, the butler remains optimistic. Inside the Mages Association, a woman has prepared everything. It's a huge amount of information, says Aria, the president of the association for that city. But since it hasn't been revealed until now, it seems suspicious. Ellen believes it's a result of political power. More and more curious, Arya wants to know how the prince will use those documents. Just then, the butler arrives at the association, and when he finds Ellen there, he realizes his job has become easier. He finally delivers the letters the boy wrote. Ellen is prepared to go, heading straight for where the party is happening. The butler says he can't enter without an invitation. That's when the mage says the protagonist is in danger of not surviving the next day. In the letter, Kalyan said he would make a deal with the queen, using his own lie. If anything goes wrong, Ellen will need to fix it. Exactly 1 hour earlier, the negotiations had begun. Kalyan tells the queen they need to be honest. She agrees, but doesn't believe anything will change. Faced with her overconfidence, Kalyan tells her to watch her manners. Thinking he just wants to argue, the queen gets up. Disappointed, she thinks she'll be entertained for a few minutes. Before she leaves, Kalyan says he knows about the poison tea. He demands it stop being served, calling it disgusting. Shocked by the accusation, the queen says she doesn't know what he's talking about. Anticipating that response, the boy is prepared so she won't do it again in the future. He brought a small box with him. Inside is a toxin that stops the heart for a few moments. It doesn't react to silver and can't be detected by magic. Since the boy has the power of a blessing, his heart won't be affected by it, but even that has its limits. The poison needs to spread throughout his body. The first question the protagonist asks is, who will they suspect first? The queen starts to smile as if she's lost her mind. She says things won't go the way the boy wants because this isn't her first time. She even says she's the one who took the protagonist's mother's lie. That enrages the boy, and he asks what he should do with that teacup. The queen suggests he drink it all. As he drains the cup, the boy says her words will be taken as a refusal. That makes the woman smile, believing no one will suspect her, because not even the king can control her. Silas believes there's nothing she can't have in that kingdom. That's how she got the throne. All she had to do was eliminate the obstacles in her path. But there's still one thing she hasn't achieved, and she's working hard to make it happen. The protagonist starts coughing violently after swallowing the poison, until his body collapses on the floor, severely weakened. The king and his brothers are panicked for the boy. While they call for a healer, the queen smiles at the scene. Chaos erupts at the party. Everyone thinks someone tried to poison the prince, even if it might have been an accident. No one can say for sure. The nobles are silent, raising suspicion in that room could be deadly. Silas is impressed with her power. No one dares to say she's guilty of anything. The king rushes to the boy's side, desperate. Holding him in his arms, he begs him to stay away. The boy tries to speak, struggling. That reminds the king of his late wife and her final vow that he would take care of their son. A memory he never forgot. Despite all the chaos, announces she is returning to her palace. Furious, the king asks if she was involved. He shouts her name loud enough for everyone to hear. Everyone at the party is stunned. The queen can't believe it. Now the nobles really start to consider that something happened. Hiding her face behind her fan, she says she doesn't understand the accusation and claims the boy has always been sickly. That only angers the king more because that's exactly what she said when the previous queen died. When she gathered all the kingdom's knights, the same scene repeated itself years later. Silas had taken advantage of the protagonist being a very sickly child. She took the opportunity to say that another person had been present at breakfast, the second prince. Hearing her accusations, the king orders her to be silent, but she is shameless and knows how to act. She says she's worried about his children. She speaks as if she were a mother figure to the boy, which offends the king even more. Then, someone unexpected speaks up. Blanche says his brother is fine and he never felt anything unusual with his health. He even remembers the protagonist telling them nothing was wrong with him. Finally, the priest arrives to check on the boy. After being shamed by her own son, Silas leaves the party. Using healing magic, the priest tries to do something, but something unexpected happens, a magical barrier created by the boy's master. It seems he arrived at the critical moment of the night. According to Ellen, that would kill the boy. The king is even more terrified because his son needs urgent treatment. Then, they are told the boy has a magical circle in his heart combined with divine power. He would die with no viable options. The king becomes increasingly desperate. Ellen says a healer with natural powers could do it, but with magic alone, it's impossible. Even the boy's master is having flashbacks. His own son had been struck by something similar. The scene is repeating itself for him. His disciple's life is about to be cut short. His expression is exactly like his son's once was. Ellen didn't expect to need that spell a second time, a spell that makes the target feel no pain at all. Obtundant is the name of that magic. Outside the city, flyers start falling from the sky. The truth about the Brizan family and the 37 people they killed. It has caused outrage. People now want revenge for what the queen did to the boy. The rumors have ignited the populace. Now talking to the king, says the mage corps needs to be established. They must take advantage of the situation since the queen is the guilty one. And coincidentally, he was already thinking about forming a mage corps. Silas is waiting to talk to the boy, not knowing when they had prepared such a thing. To her surprise, the protagonist is fine. Even after spending a week on the brink of death, he is weak, but he's trying as hard as he can to show strength, not weakness. For some strange reason, they are negotiating again. The boy says her deadline has passed. After a week, the situation is different, and in fact, the queen is more willing to listen and accept proposals. Now, Galleon flashes a mocking smile, saying Silas has forgotten something important. Her permission is now useless. Furious, Silas asks what he wants. He demands the Knights of Pavel. It's time to get rid of that military force. That scares the queen, because it's her biggest asset. To continue, Silas will have to give up what is essentially her personal guard. Galleon calls his butler, Siegfried, who brings some documents, a contract guaranteeing the queen's word, and one of the clauses involves her death if she breaks it. Done through magic, it will destroy the heart of anyone who disobeys. The second prince returns to tending his roses, and he finds out the queen went to talk to Galleon as soon as he woke up. Before Galleon lost consciousness, his eyes met his brother's once again. Our boy had said the flowers would bloom, a sign that all of this was planned. Now he knows what really bloomed. The second prince is thinking about cooperating. Even Planche can see our boy has recovered. Things are changing fast. Silas doesn't want to make that magical oath. But for Galleon, the only way to negotiate with a woman like her is with real consequences. He's just waiting for her to say the word. After thinking, furious, Silas grabs a keel to sign the contract. The magic quickly starts spreading through her body, showing the contract has been sealed. For our protagonist, this is the perfect situation. Before she leaves, Galleon admits he's never had a good relationship with his brothers, and that Planche didn't step in to help him. He underestimates what he doesn't understand. And if he says anything more provocative, the king's sword will take his head without hesitation. After a long moment of silence, Silas finally leaves. Ellen comes to see his disciple straight away, who has woken up, especially after hearing the queen was there. It doesn't take him long to realize Galleon is hungry, happily eating some bananas. Our boy says he's done his part, and he's very happy about it. Ellen says they were lucky. The half-elf siblings appeared at the right time. The girl used natural powers to heal. Galleon really took a huge risk, and even he agrees because he didn't know Hina's potential. That makes Galleon go silent. Even in his previous life, he didn't know because the girl had died young. That only makes Ellen angrier, because that boy's plan was unbelievably reckless. Still, Ellen gives Galleon what he asked for the elf siblings' papers. They needed an official surname, and Ellen chose Baron, our protagonist's old name. It was a small detail that made our boy really happy. Making them citizens of that land makes everything much better. But Ellen says the idea was actually Ryan's. The rumor that the king cares deeply for him is spreading. Galleon realizes that's something someone else should have felt later. While he's thinking, our boy asks the butler for a few more bananas, but Siegfried has something important to say. He can't continue as a butler anymore. Now, there's a flashback of the butler. He went to see his brother, who looked incredibly weak, covered in bandages. They talked about the birdsong that morning. Throughout the summer, the brother, barely able to hold on, had asked Siegfried to play the violin for him later. The butler overheard the adults talking. His brother's condition was getting worse. Back then, he didn't really understand what it meant not to be able to have something, or to be someone who would never have it. Some time later, his brother asked him to tell the truth, asking if he was dying from that disease. Then, a fire broke out there. They had to evacuate in a hurry. It was caused by that butler's brother. That's how he left a world full of suffering. Winter came and eventually summer returned with the birdsong, but nothing was the same. Siegfried couldn't stand seeing his son so isolated, so he forced him out of his room. That's when the butler saw a small boy in the square, the third prince of the nation, our protagonist. That was the day the butler decided to become a butler. He has told our boy everything, and even though he was close to him, he knew nothing about what had happened to our protagonist. Worse, he delivered that poison with his own hands. Feeling incredibly guilty about everything. Because of that, because he knew nothing, Galleon almost died, and he doesn't want that to happen again. Seeing the butler distracted, Galleon shouts to get his attention. First, he tells him to say who he's looking at right now. It's the protagonist, and that's proof he's not going to die. The butler has always been by his side. and this is not the time for Kalyan to lose his banana peeler. Because with his help, he has managed to endure everything until now. There's one thing our boy is sure of. He knows he can trust the butler with anything. Siegfried Jr., after all this, is crying like a child, realizing he still won't be able to go home because he has found the person he will protect for the rest of his life. After calming down, he promises he will find all those who persecuted our protagonist. Kalyan says if he's going to get revenge, he should be quiet because elephants make too much noise. The butler tries to take back his words, saying he won't be too loud until he realizes the word Kalyan used for him. Elephant. That means Kalyan knew everything. The butler wants to know when he learned the truth, and our boy dodges the question. At least they're back to acting normal, leaving the past behind them. Our boy is pulled into a deep moment of introspection where he sees him, the former master of this body, approaching him, walking his own path to a place no one knows. It feels like a thank you and a goodbye. Kalyan is falling, drifting further and further from that strange moment until he finally wakes up in his own room. He held a morning ceremony, lighting a candle for the old Kalyan, who is now gone for good. Our boy says the old Kalyan seemed to be in a hurry. He gave him the life he has now, but wished the protagonist could achieve what he wanted. For the old Kalyan, life was a prison, which makes our boy envious of the freedom he must be living now. But too much has happened, and he can't give up halfway. The protagonist decides he will live this second life to the fullest. The Knights of Paul have been disbanded, and have returned to prison territory, and the announcement of the mage corps has just been made. After 3 months, the protagonist's servants conclude they need to call the tailor because our boy has grown so much. When he goes to see the king, Ryan is impressed by the young man's height. They are preparing for Rosalda, because it's Kalyan's birthday. Ellen says he has someone to introduce to his disciple the mage who will be in charge of his security during the ceremony. Arson introduces himself, and says he's honored to have that responsibility. His presence nearly gives Kalyan a heart attack. Ryan says he's an excellent mage from the corps, because he's very talented. Our boy feels flattered, realizing it's a big surprise while also trying to contain his anger. The mage corps is almost ready to be established. Realistically, they still need a name, and there are still a lot of adjustments to be made. While the meeting is happening, Kalyan can't stop looking at Arson. Ellen asks the king if he has any name suggestions since he's been thinking about something like this for a while, and he does. Vulcan. His answer comes so fast that Ellen is relieved he asked before suggesting anything himself. Our boy wants to know what Arson thinks. The mage looks a bit confused by the question, and Kalyan clarifies he means the name Vulcan. What does he think? Still a bit cautious, Arson says it's a good name, and that's what was chosen. Later, using a silencing spell, our boy tells Ellen everything that happened in the past involving Arson. Even though Arson killed him, there's no need to change the guard now. The situation has changed, and so have people. Still, our boy holds a deep grudge about what happened. The person who came to see our boy is Baron Miller. It's been a while since they last saw each other. Our boy apologizes for breaking off contact, but Miller feels extremely honored to be in touch with the third prince since he's never associated with any nobles until now. But our boy gets straight to the point. He came to claim his reward for saving the man's life. In every sense, the Baron was expecting something like that. He's done business in diamonds and even horses with the royal family, but the prince seems eager to hear something else. Miller says he doesn't have anything to offer him yet, and that makes Kalyan smile. Our boy asks if the nobleman can do a different kind of business, and Miller says he has the men and resources for it. The problem is, Prison has that too. The Baron is confused, because he thought he had Kalyan in his pocket, but Kalyan was very direct, and it was unexpected. Our boy smiles and says, exactly. Kalyan says he will establish a mage unit. They have the men and resources, but they need management. Miller asks if that's the price for his life. Our boy says yes. That's the price he wants. Full of loyalty, Miller is ready to report for duty from someone who was supposed to die at 15. Kalyan hasn't just changed things, he's also surrounded by people he can trust. All that's left is to find Safanian at the ceremony and ask why all of this happened. During his birthday celebration, Kalyan realizes everything has been well prepared. Even that jerk of a brother is there, and it's been a while since they last talked. As Kalyan walks by, Blanche calls him Blood Eye. Our boy says he won't tolerate that anymore. His name is Kalyan. To his surprise, Blanche says that's not Kalyan because he rides horses, he's his a sword, and even talks back. Blanche wants to know who he really is. Kalyan also needs to remember he's no longer Baron and Blanche isn't the Mad King he once knew. First, he must wait a little longer until he learns from Safanian what really happened. Looking at his brother, he says he has a lot of crazy ideas. Ellen says Planche may be an alcoholic, but he's not stupid, so it makes sense he finds it strange. Over time, Kalyan realizes his brother's suspicion will grow. They need to deal with that. Ellen reminds him that he is now Kalyan and no one else. And that's exactly what our protagonist has decided. However, it's not easy to forget that he was once Baron. The mage throws something toward his student and tells him to catch it, a communication ring, so he can be advised when needed. It doesn't work where Sifanian's power is present. It's useless in the castle, but outside it works fine. Ellen also reminds him that everyone in that hall is his person. Commander Yoon introduces himself. He leads Siegfried's men, and they will protect Kalyan all the way to Sifanian's nest, which is in their territory. They are really impressed, and they don't seem to like their young master working as a butler. Siegfried asks if his boy needs anything before the journey begins. And in front of all those knights, Kalyan asks the butler to bring him something to drink. To make matters worse, the butler asks if he'd like some tea. When Kalyan decides, the butler tells him to wait a moment. Kalyan clearly notices those knights are really annoyed by that. Ellen can't understand why his disciple is intentionally making enemies in the city. This ceremony seems very important, a rare thing. The large procession is ready to depart. Blanche is still watching everything closely. The queen won't be going with them, but she's still deep in thought. Our boy will go with his master's approval. The Rosalita ceremony has just begun. Knowing what happened recently, the king is worried about his son's safety. Ellen says there's no need to worry so much. Ryan finds the confidence strange, and the Archmage says he didn't say anything special, but that's exactly the attitude that makes the king even more worried. Kalyan looks at the communication ring, and since there's no response, his master must be in the palace. The butler is still extremely attentive, and that only adds to the knight's anger. Siegfried had said something about it. Kalyan can't use magic, and his sword skills aren't very good. So, the knights need to be even more careful, because the young prince is basically a defenseless child. That just angers the knights more. They hope young master Siegfried will soon give up this menial job. They still have 3 more hours to go. The butler suggests they stop for a rest. But just then, everyone is on alert. Kalyan realizes this isn't the kind of situation. From the middle of the forest, a girl appears asking for help. She's not an ordinary person, she's an elf. After being rescued, she says her name is Sia, and she's hungry. She's been hiding in the forest. Kalyan starts to feel his first contact with her was really strange. The commander asks what they should do. Kalyan tells them to feed the girl. He also says that if she's being pursued, she should have said so earlier. A hooded man on a horse is approaching. Kalyan pulls the hood over the girl's head and tells them to hide her. When the stranger approaches, they ask who he is. The man says he's chasing a thief. The commander says there are no strangers with them, but the man quickly spots the hidden child. He tells the knights he's not here to cause trouble and asks to have a look. So, Kalyan asks what the person he's looking for looks like. The wanderer says it's a young elf, and Kalyan tells him to look for that. The girl panics, and the wanderer moves toward her. As he passes Kalyan, Kalyan orders him not to turn back, and to pay close attention. 2 people are hiding and watching, and they're not there to help. Their murderous intent is aimed at the wanderer and the child. Once he confirms where the girl is, arrows will be fired. The wanderer looks back in desperation, and the arrows fly. But they are all stopped mid-air by our protagonist because he had even warned the wanderer not to look back. The possible ambush has put all the knights in combat mode. Arson erects a protective barrier around the protagonist. At least he's useful for things like that, even if Kalyan doesn't like him. The arrows stop flying. The attackers must have fled. Arson says he will take care of the child and tells Kiri to help our boy. Approaching the protagonist, Kiri sees something dangerous. That wanderer is about to decapitate the young prince, shocking everyone there. Our boy blocks the attack quite easily and even uses magic to counterattack, slamming the attacker to the ground. The knights didn't expect our boy to be not useless. It seems the prince can do more than they expected. The butler is clearly horrified and starts scolding our boy. He could have been seriously injured. He says, our boy is not good with a sword and not good with magic either. But the knights who witnessed everything completely disagree. A useless person wouldn't have been able to do that to the wanderer, and not so easily. Later, it's time to talk to the elf child. When asked what she stole, she says Luca did it. She didn't do anything. Kalyan can't interrogate the child. She looks very panicked. So, he calls Arson to help. It's his job to understand everything the elf is saying. After a short interrogation, Arson looks exhausted. Salis works in the Herazov forest, and she was with Luca. It seems he stole something from those men. The two of them were separated while escaping. Moreover, the girl answers before anyone asks her anything. She doesn't know why it happens. It feels like a kind of precognition, but she says it's not quite like that. Arsent has the difficult task of keeping an eye on the child. Galien will leave her in the next forest, so they're not delayed, and investigating what happened will be up to the lord of that area. At that moment, the commander comes to talk to our boy. There's something very suspicious mixed in with the wanderer's belongings, and he shows Galien the artifact, who is also very surprised. Our boy knows exactly what it is. It's the poison he's been drinking every day for a long time. Now, he wants to personally interrogate that wanderer. Now that he's locked up, the wanderer says he thought our protagonist was just a young noble, but realizes he was wrong. Galien replies that he's even more special than he imagines. Presenting a small sample of the poison, our boy says he won't press for answers. He wants the truth. He asks if the wanderer knows what it is. The wanderer says they all have a bit of it. He thought it was something useful, so he stole some too. Our boy asks what those people were looking for. The wanderer says he's not sure because they all wore masks. That sends Galien deep into thought. It seems the wanderer isn't lying or trying to protect anyone. But if our boy finds out what the problem is, he might be able to help this man because he's the very precious son of an influential family. The wanderer says his wife is in the village of Hansen, and those people know where she is. Galien promises he will protect her at all costs. He also learns that those men dropped small, fingernail-sized marbles. He also heard they needed to be checked by a priest. Galien thinks it might be a relic used by the priests of Tencel, and Tencel has been searching for sacred relics. So, if they lost something valuable, they must be worried. Now the question is why they have that poison. It was used by Sakurai as secret agents so they wouldn't be exposed if caught. The wanderer also says he heard them call their leader the Blue Lar, and L. It sounds like a good name, and it surprises our protagonist as a bird name is associated with his father, and it's somewhere nearby. A heavy rain starts to fall, and it has stopped our protagonist from moving forward. So, he has to stop in Latland territory, which he doesn't like. The lord of that place is drunk, happy about our protagonist staying there. Hale is sure it's a blessing from heaven that has forced him to serve the third prince. Earlier, the butler had asked if our boy remembered Count Hale. He had sent our boy a gift before, one of the gifts that was returned. He used to support Prince Randall, then switched to supporting Planche. Our boy sees him as a social climber. Hale says he couldn't even sleep after hearing the rumor that our boy was in the area. Even the Count's butler looks ashamed of it. Arsent has to interrupt the meeting because he has something to say to our protagonist. Quietly, he says they caught the messenger bird. Our boy knew they would try to contact the Blue Lar, but the rain ruined everything. Hale offers the mage a drink, but is refused. Galien asks if there are any priests of Tencel there. Hale gets flustered and drops the wine bottle. He gets angry and says, those priests are arrogant, and claim the land is ruined. He becomes more and more agitated, and our boy realizes there's no point in trying to talk. Using the little magic he knows, he puts the lord into a deep sleep. Our boy is angry. Hale's words really annoyed him. Through the ring, Galien tells his master that he's involved in the theft of that sacred relic, and is now in danger. But using knowledge from his past lie, our boy believes it's fine. The Blue Lark has never failed a mission, and she must have known he was the third prince. They need to investigate the place, and look for priests to find out what that spy is trying to do with them. A local bar seems almost empty. Our protagonist goes there, saying the people outside followed him. A woman tells him not to worry, saying she's not cruel enough to harm others without reason. Galien admits he was worried, thinking his procession was attacked because they knew who he was, and of course, they knew the boy's identity, but that wanderer didn't want to listen. That's when our boy notices there aren't many people living in that bar. The Blue Lark says that the man acted impulsively. Galien asks if she's involved in this now. Initially, the woman would have said yes, but looking at our boy, she feels the coldness of an experienced person and thinks about attacking him with her knife, then decides it won't be easy. Our boy wants to know if the elf she was chasing is still alive. They lost track of him in the forest. She doesn't like how things are going, and since none of them suffered much damage, she suggests our protagonist leave, promising to leave the child alone. To agree to that, Galien wants some questions answered. First is why they're looking for a sacred relic if she's not a priestess. The woman starts observing our boy with a hard, cold look. She says those objects are very valuable. Our boy suggests she plans to sell them, and she says her main job doesn't pay well. Our boy asks if the buyer of the relic lives in Latland. She says she doesn't need to sell the relic that way. It would be much easier to find a buyer in Kias. The woman says her buyer pays very well, and she already has a rare relationship with him. Our boy knows a spy from Sakurai can only build a relationship through one path with those who sell information about Kias. To pay for that information, she's receiving relics. After thinking for a bit, our boy will ask the final question. We return to the royal palace. Many requests have been made to the king. He is our protagonist's master, and he says he knows the person very well. Not too much confirmation is needed. He wants to know how many priests of Tencel have passed through those lands. The king thinks it could be a coincidence. There are currently 14 priests. Other priests have come to the area with a single offer. They are gathering all of them. It's not like Kias is forcing them to do anything. So, he has allowed them to search. Ellen says Tencel's situation is not good. They need a lot of priests. That's why the king allowed them to leave the territory. He still doesn't understand what the Archmage is aiming for. But he learns that his son wants to know the location of all of them, which makes the king really curious. There's no reason for his son to be interested in that since he's already in an area with a priest. Meanwhile, Hale is drinking from a specific wine bottle. Now, a similar bottle is in the hands of the mysterious woman. Our boy notices that small detail. The blue lark returns to the final question. It seems she has answered it, saying it wasn't very modest. Outside, in a hurry, Kalyan realizes his host has lied. The priest is being hidden there. Kalyan needs to return to the castle urgently. He has told his master about it. When he put the man to sleep during their meeting, he was sure the man wasn't drunk. It was all an act. Where our boy is staying, someone tries to talk to him, but his butler won't allow it. Kalyan has gone out for a night walk. The old butler there says he needs to talk to our boy because his master wants to apologize. Siegfried says that's not the right way to apologize, and it's not a butler's job to meddle in the prince's life. That makes the old man very ashamed. Siegfried is trying to buy time because our boy hasn't returned yet, and he can't let those people find out anything. He gets tougher with the old man, telling him to stop bothering them. Then, our protagonist opens the bedroom door, complaining that he can't rest with all that noise. His butler is relieved to see him. Kalyan calls his butler incompetent, saying his only job is to shoo away curious people. That makes the boy apologize, because the old man wouldn't leave. With a powerful move, our boy slams the bedroom door shut. But inside, he's relieved. His clothes are still wet, and he realizes he just perfectly mimicked his brother's jerk behavior. With everything settled, his butler admits he returned earlier than expected, using the window to do it. Kalyan asks if anything else happened while he was away, but it was just that old man. The problem was the curious people, and our boy climbed out of a third-story window. After being scolded for it, he promises to be more careful. Kalyan notices his butler is a bit annoyed, and he hears a fair complaint. Our boy never listens to him. He says Kalyan went for a walk, but the old man kept coming back again and again to talk to our boy, insistent and methodical, more interested in the time than where our boy had gone. Contacting his master, he realizes the lord of that area was on alert. He was definitely not drunk during that meeting. Now they are about to discover something much bigger. His contract with the Blue Lark could be exposed. Drinking from that bottle would have been a perfect excuse, but the lord was put to sleep by magic. That's why the butler was so nervous trying to figure out our boy's true intentions. Now it's about why he wanted to get a sacred relic that could help in negotiations with Haladam, Randall's mother's land, signaling the Baron wants them to be close, giving gifts to all possible heirs, helping that child start all of this. Discovering a traitorous noble doesn't feel like a coincidence. Since it was raining heavily, our boy was stuck in that building, and he decided to hunt the traitor. Hale is furious. He should have realized our boy would be trouble when his gift was returned. Because of that unexpected spell, his plan isn't Jeopardy. Blinded by anger, Hale wishes our boy were dead. He has spent a lot of money to get political allies. He was promised fertile lands near the capital, but the scandal with Silas ruined everything. The old butler comes to talk to him. He still hasn't been able to talk to the informant. Here he is. The noble throws a glass at the old man's head, saying he does nothing right, and thanks to the rain, the protagonist will be there for another day. The old butler asks if the negotiations should be postponed. Hale says there's no other option. They can't do anything while the prince is there. Still seething with anger, he tells the maid to bring his clothes. He's ready to teach our protagonist a lesson in humility he will never forget. It's dinner time, and it's still raining heavily outside. Hale believes the protagonist's calm demeanor is just a trick. He intends to use his title as count to punish our boy for using magic on him. Soon that young prince will have to beg for forgiveness. While talking to our boy, Someone apologizes for the previous night. Callion says it's fine and continues eating. Hale asks if any magic was used. Our boy confirms, saying the Lord's behavior was becoming unbearable. But it's fine, old grudges. He'll let it go since this must be the first time that Noble has hosted someone from the royal family. He must have been nervous. Hale didn't expect such a response. Realizing our boy is extremely sharp after that brief exchange, Hale is the one who looks like a fool. Callion says he's exhausted from investigating an ambush, and because of it, he received some very interesting information, the name of a type of bird. Hale almost chokes when he hears it, making the old butler very worried. Hale says not to interrupt because he and the prince are talking. Callion says he still needs more details, but it's in the Lord's best interest to know everything that's happening on his land. Clearly nervous, Hale says he will help with the investigation. He doesn't want the prince to get hurt in his territory. The commander of the knights also decides to come. While they talk, Hale gets more and more frustrated, and our boy says something very fortunate happened for that count. It seems their man finally decided to tell the truth. They all went to that same bar. Hale is disgusted. He would never go to such a suburb. Despite the noble's efforts, our boy won that battle. The wanderer asks what happened to his wife. Callion says they didn't do anything to his family because he kept his word. But there's a reason he came to see the man. He will be punished by execution for trying to attack a prince, and there are witnesses. Nothing can be done. Even if he were pardoned, he has serious injuries that will soon end his life. But our protagonist can offer another path, a decent life with arable land and a modest house to live with his wife if he's willing to cooperate. And his punishment will only be the amputation of his infected arm. After thinking for a bit, the wanderer agrees. He confirms the Blue Lark is a spy and she was there to meet a client. They have a long-standing relationship. In Hill's presence, our boy says there's a double agent there. That kind of betrayal is extremely serious. The words have left the poor count completely terrified. Callion is just waiting for him to do something and provide more evidence. The old butler starts begging for mercy, saying he was just following orders. Ellen didn't expect something like this, and our boy takes a closer look at the old man, concluding he's a priest of Tencel. Only they can buy sacred artifacts. The count had discovered that secret. The old man is sure his head will be chopped off when it's discovered he's been selling sacred relics. That puzzles our boy because it's not like they're buying the artifacts. More and more interested, he realizes the old man is ready to tell everything. The buyer is Viscount Lannon, Queen Silas's brother. He's the one supplying the artifacts to Howard. So, it seems the political intrigues are not over. If this is happening, it means the Viscount has given up on Planche and sided with Randall. So, he shouldn't be supporting the Queen anymore. Now that they know that, the question is what the next move will be. This is the kind of news that will cause a huge uproar. So, Ellen suggests they talk to the king first. Before that can happen, the young prince requests a letter be written to Count Hale. He tells them to take care of the prisoner's arm. Since the wound is too severe, the arm will have to be amputated, and he tells the prisoner to accept it. The commander is ready to follow any order. As for Kiri, he needs to find the man's wife and take her to a safe place. The elf girl is also excited, and she has come with Hina to help clean up. She still talks too much, but the prince has understood what she's like. Without Arson there, this will be very difficult. The butler asks if the prince is going to do anything with that messenger bird, and finds out he has no intention of doing so. It's time to return it to its original owner. He just watches while the girls seem to enjoy the little bird. Callion says he'll buy one like that for Hina when they return to the palace because that one needs to be returned soon. Since Hina shares a room with another maid, she says her friend might feel uncomfortable with the bird. Callion tells her to open the cage at lunchtime and do it near the window, because he's expecting a guest that night. He reads a book with a lot of patience. His guest arrives earlier than expected. The Blue Lark says the letter was too touching. It was a threat. Callion will expose everything at the shop in the capital. The woman wants to know why this is happening. The princess collected evidence of the relic sales. He wants more, enough to keep one of her secrets. Still, she took a long time to answer, but there was no other option but to agree. Admitting she hates tedious arrangements, she throws a couple of dice toward him. Callion realizes they are magical bullets. He has to use a magical barrier to protect himself, causing a huge explosion inside the room and alerting everyone to what has happened. Callion locks the bedroom door, preventing anyone from entering. Turning back to the woman, he asks if she really came there to kill him. Since she has no more bullets, she resorts to her blade to finish the job. He knows he won't be able to withstand many aura attacks with the simple sword he's carrying. He needs to end the fight quickly. After a few exchanges, he disarms her, then realizes she still has magical bullets, and one of them is flying straight at his chest. With a lot of skill, he uses his sword to block it, but the blade ends up severely damaged. Now, Hellion is completely defenseless against a determined woman. Two mysterious fears have just fallen to the floor. The spy has injured an arm, learning a bitter lesson that the prince is a master swordsman. She can't attack him now. Hellion is angry, thinking about what he should do. Then, he decides to call her real name, Isla. That stuns her. Hellion grabs her by the neck, and he realizes something immediately. It's not there. The poison that should have been hidden in her mouth. Something all of Sakurai's spies have. Now it's time for her to cooperate and share the evidence. Isla asks if she'll be released if she does that. Hellion is getting more and more confused about her, not knowing if she's loyal to her cause. Maybe she has changed over time. Isla says that if the prince doesn't want to be caught, he should let her go quickly, or she'll tell all the knights what happened there, assuming he wants to keep his identity a secret. In the past, the Blue Lark was not a traitor. She used to fight with a sword, and she wasn't like this version of herself. That makes the prince even angrier. Hellion says that if she's willing to go this far for this, she shouldn't have died in front of him. A deep silence falls between them. The prince lets the spy go, and says his secret isn't that impressive. All he asked from her was evidence, promising she would be released without questioning, because he knows she'll have to answer to the White Eagle about what happened. Hale is still angry about everything that's happening. He doesn't know what that letter meant. He was told he would need a representative, and someone has told the queen what's happening. This is the letter written by the prince's master. Hale realizes his plan to sell sacred relics has just been exposed. The Archmage is really sharp, and all of this was initiated by the young prince. Because of everything that's happening, Hale starts to feel like everyone is underestimating him. But he had a backup plan, and he has stored a lot of treasure in his mansion. That will be enough for a quiet escape. And there's a special item worth more than all the others. With all those relics, he'll make a huge fortune. That's when Arson thanks him for the information, because he's been hidden all this time. Hale nearly has a heart attack from being so surprised, because the mage was completely invisible. That was the evidence they needed. Arson presents the hidden relics along with the leaked information from that kingdom. That makes the prince very happy. Most of that problem has been solved. The one who is still very worried is the prince's butler. He says something is happening outside. Some knights have arrived at the residence, and they belong to Kayla. They should be protecting the king, not showing up there. Ellen doesn't understand why elite knights were sent to that location. A bit of an overkill. But the king doesn't want to take any risks. He only trusts those knights because of everything that has happened recently. The Archmage says this will have a big impact, because the king is giving the prince special treatment that could strain other relationships. Since the king hasn't supported any of his children yet, remembering a tragic past, the king knows what could happen. He says his other children will join him the next day. It's time to see how they behave when they're all together. The butler wants to know if the prince has left yet. Hellion says he still has tasks to resolve. The criminals will be sent to the capital. It's a shame one of them is no longer alive. That wanderer was declared dead, but in reality, he received the prince's promise and will live a quiet life in the countryside. Very worried, the old man wants to know what will happen to him. The prince knows the old man also has a large share of the blame. The old man knows he's completely guilty, but he was used as a tool. He will be shown mercy, but he must swear loyalty to the prince, being promoted to the prince's butler, which is actually a very good outcome. Still, the old man is a bit uneasy. Hellion can finally return to his main mission, finding Sifanian. Hale will live the rest of his life in prison. As for the blue-haired girl, she ended her life at the guillotine. Renata was covering the streets that day, a type of shrub that specializes in absorbing moisture. The capital was covered in them, and they kept the white stones from turning red with the blood of the condemned. Randall is testing the prince now because of his involvement with the nation interested in the artifacts. But for Planche and his gang, it's a misplaced concern. In fact, he hasn't drunk anything alcoholic since the prince left those lands. Planche asks if his brother remembers the drunk version of him. Randall says that if he stops his alcoholism, he can move on to the next task, learning to keep quiet. After dropping a fork on the floor, Planche says he's become too quiet. Back to the prince. They've reached a very dangerous stretch of road. There's a landslide on their path. To continue, it would be better to change direction. This trip is taking too long. Hellion is so frustrated that he decides he'll set up a teleportation gate when he gets back. The elf girl says she can take them to her village to help with that. She says Luca is also in that village, along with the elder. They can stay there overnight and continue their journey the next day. The news makes the prince really happy. After a short trip, they arrive at the village and are very impressed. It's very well built. Galleon never thought he'd see an elf village. The leader introduces himself, a gray-haired man who wants to know who the king of humans is. Galleon says, there's no one with that title among them, but introduces himself as the representative of the procession. Sir is the elder of that village, and he has a request for the humans. The prince wants to hear the details before giving an answer. Not long ago, 3 elves left the village to visit humans, and they still haven't returned. The scouts sent to find them haven't either. He wants to know if they've found anyone, because they know very little about human territory. Galleon notices the elves tend to ask for a lot. Sir asks because he believes he's talking to the king of humans. These people don't seem very smart, and the prince says he's just a prince. For the elder, that doesn't matter. But the prince is tired of their simplicity, saying there's a big difference in meaning. Sir confirms he's not asking for free. He knows the procession is heading to Siegfried. Taking the human roads might be slow, but they know the forest well, which could reduce travel time by up to 4 times, a journey that could take 2 months. That's enough to convince the prince to help them. Knowing that, the elder flashes a sly smile. Investigating in the forest, they find no trace of the translators. They find some mercenaries, but they don't seem to be involved in the crime. They could be slave traders, but it doesn't seem like it. Galleon decides to investigate the nearby towns. According to the commander, there seems to be a rivalry between the cities there. A healthy rivalry could be beneficial. Galleon is thinking he might get a new sword out of this. When he arrives at the first town, he's surprised to see they have no swords. The prince looks clearly disappointed, but the shopkeeper says he looks too young to be a mercenary. Galleon says it's not just mercenaries who need them. The shopkeeper says he's wasting his time. The entire armory has been bought up by the lord, who is hiring mercenaries. Galleon says he'll go to the neighboring town to see if he can find what he wants, but the shopkeeper says it will be useless, because the same thing is happening there. Finally, the prince understands what the elves want. Those cities are ready to go to war, and the elf village is right in the middle. The prince has written a couple of letters to both lords. He will buy time so the war doesn't happen, giving the elves time to return home. Now that he's done his part, Galleon wants to continue his journey. The elder is worried and asks what he's going to do about the war. Galleon realizes the old man knew that detail but chose to hide it. Apparently, the elves who didn't return home decided to work with mercenaries. All the signs of war were clear. They knew, and they tried to use the prince to stop it, because he's royalty. The old elf is cornered. Annoyed, Galleon says he doesn't need the secret path in the forest because their deal is off. With no more strategic advantage, the elder asks the prince to wait a little longer. He can't just watch a war happen and do nothing. Galleon says no one can fight forever. If the village is important to them, they should work to protect it without relying on childish tricks and lies. Now the elder has no choice. Galleon says the routes the merchants use have been suspended. Only Singh goes that far, and the prince knows exactly who that is. The cities about to go to war have very poor land for farming. They depend heavily on merchants. Berezin abruptly cut off business with one of them, causing a huge price imbalance and pushing the conflict closer. Galleon understands that trade carries responsibility, but it only affects the common people. It doesn't reach the nobles. Outside, someone starts knocking on the door. It's the old elf coming to offer a sincere apology. Luca was the one who dragged the prince into this mess. The elder couldn't tell the truth, because he didn't know how the prince would react. To make matters worse, Luca is his son. Everyone who disappeared is related to him. If the prince knew the truth, the elder thought he wouldn't help, and he begged the prince for forgiveness. Even if it's an excessive favor, this help could change everyone's lives. With no patience to hear the whole apology, Galleon tells the elder to deliver those letters to the lords. He should also find out if they need anything besides food, because Galleon will meet them after he gets that information. The old elf can hardly believe he's still being helped. Galleon says he's not doing it for him. Still, the elder says elves never forget their promises, and he vows to never forget that kindness. Later, Galleon starts thinking about Lannan Berezin, who is still a thorn in his side. Using the ring to talk to his master, he says it's time to clean house. The news reaches Marquis Ivan Berezin. The carriage is ready to pick him up, but the patriarch says he won't be leaving that day. He asks his butler to handle everything with the guests, but the butler didn't know this would happen. Nothing was scheduled, and the Marquis would miss the council meeting anyway. Moreover, he prefers to receive guests in the meeting room. Now, the question is who this person is. It's the prince's master. He and the Marquis have not yet met in person. Ivan says he would have prepared better if he had been warned, but the mage assures him it will be quick. He says his second son has caught the third prince's attention, and that makes the Marquis uneasy. Taking a sip of tea, the Marquis says, Lannon is not brave enough to do such a thing. Ellen realizes this man despises his own children, so he brings something more reliable than the opinion he's clinging to, a letter. After reading it, he becomes furious and asks what the mage is trying to say. They both know he tried to get rid of that troublesome child. Angry, the Marquis says he won't hear this from a charlatan. In response, Ellen says, it's hard to have a conversation with someone whose throat has been cut. That only angers the Marquis more, because he's being disrespected in his own territory. Ellen is stunned by the audacity. This man has no idea how dangerous Ellen can be. So, Ellen makes him feel something primal, the fear of death. Ellen also says he's not like our protagonist, who hesitates when it comes to violence, because this mage will not hesitate to cut off a few heads. After being threatened, the Marquis basically pees his pants a little. Finally, he has to calm down. The truth is, Ellen is impressed with the man's endurance. He withstood the pressure of an 8th circle mage. Ellen also says he's sure the Marquis can take care of his son, but he's going to suggest a more effective path. The Marquis could be pushed out of his own inner circle. Callion had told his master the following. They would buy the man's business. When the rumor about the prince being poisoned spreads, it will affect the company's profits. The Lannon family is made up of knights. The trade association was established for the second son, because he had no talent with a sword. At the first sign of loss, they will give it up. The Marquis asks why Ellen is cooperating so much. Our boy had anticipated that question too. Callion said he wouldn't be the buyer, but they already had the right person in mind. They would sell the company to the second largest merchant in the region, Yahello. It's up to the Marquis to start the negotiations. The Marquis's son has been hit hard by Hale's arrest. He wants to flee before anyone finds any connection between them. His luck is so bad, he can't even keep his plant alive. While he's thinking about what to do, he's caught by a mysterious shadow. A man starts to choke him. He's finally arrested, and the rumor about the sale of sacred relics starts to spread. In prison, he tries to use the weight of his family name, but he remains locked up. In the end, the Marquis's reputation was clear, and Miller's management proved to be exceptionally brilliant. In the elf village, the old pointy-eared man says, the mother tree has prepared the path for our boy. Luca will lead them through that passage. Callion thanks him for everything but says he prefers Sirius's help. The girl they met in the forest, because she seems to know the place well. They are ready to move on. That's when our protagonist notices the child starts talking normally. It feels strange. And on top of that, the child is holding something quite mysterious. Apparently, our protagonist is very interested in that strange little stone and asks if it's the sacred artifact they stole. Luca gets nervous and says he doesn't remember. Arson seems to recognize something about that stone. It could also be an artifact, which immediately grabs our protagonist's attention. The commander of the Knights says, the energy radiating from that object is dangerous, and yes, they can feel an evil aura leaking from that small stone. It's possible the previous owner died a brutal, violent death, and that needs to be investigated. Callion allows the girl to continue using the stone to make communication between them easier, and the artifact that once belonged to Luca now belongs to our protagonist. The girl is really happy about that, and says she'll return it when they reach their destination. The one who is still worried is the commander. Oh Lord, it seems that kid is a boy. Anyway, the commander is also concerned because he seems to know the questions before they're even asked. That's something our protagonist has noticed. That child can sense what's about to happen, and that stone seems to prevent it from happening. Maybe it's related to the asses of time. Our protagonist's blonde-haired brother is receiving some information. He's still thinking a lot about what our boy said about the roses blooming. Lannon is the enemy who has fallen this time. The blonde-haired boy starts using an artifact hidden in his hand. Through it, he has made the withered flowers come back to life. Back in the forest, our protagonist seems to be meditating a lot, building his internal energy. Ellen says that instead of strengthening his magic, the boy has strengthened the aura he has, which is not what Ellen wanted, and it's a habit from his past life because he used to use a sword. The problem is that even when he tries to strengthen his magic, he ends up doing the opposite. Knowing that, his master says he can help him with that. Our boy needs to continue on his own path. Continuing their journey, they reach the end of the forest. Galleon sees a huge city. It's the land of the elephants, the home of his butler's family. The elf boy remembers that now they have to say goodbye, and he's ready to return the artifact to our protagonist. But Callion has something to ask the child. Does he really need to return to the village right now? It seems they don't want him there very much. If the boy's condition is a problem, our protagonist is willing to help. Before accepting the offer, the boy admits that he sometimes feels uncomfortable in his village. But he learned from his mother that this is who he is, in his purest, simplest form. Unlike others, he doesn't need to be fixed. Even if he speaks differently, that doesn't change the fact that he's an L. Those words have impressed our protagonist, and he realizes he still has a lot of growing up to do. The two say their goodbyes. Galleon really wants to see that little friend again. Arson used to be annoyed by the child's appearance. It seems he will miss him a lot. The city looks like a giant fortress. It's a relief to know that the Siegfried family has never wanted to take the Empire's throne. Before entering the city, Galleon tells his butler he can act more comfortably. He doesn't want to bother the knights there anymore, and he asks his butler not to act too much like a servant. But the boy was offended and said he could handle the situation. Siegfried still has a strong sense of responsibility toward our boy, who held a blade in mid-air to save him. After they are assigned their rooms, our boy takes a bath. He thinks he's arrived in Siegfried territory. He has arrived, but they are still at the outermost gate. They still have 2 days of travel ahead of them. Galleon looks at that mysterious stone again. He realizes that although he has changed because of this second lie, his mana is still the same. So, he had a brilliant idea to use his aura to fuel the mana he needs. Arson sees the intense light of that energy, and is amazed. Our boy has just found a huge source of magic, easily reaching the 4th circle. They finally get close to the main castle, but that raises another problem. Besides him, there are 6 other master swordsmen on the continent. Those with strong auras can recognize who is weaker. Siegfried's father is the 2nd strongest on the continent, far surpassing our boy. All he needs is a glimpse. He was shocked to realize he was standing before another master swordsman. Siegfried has a lot of questions, wanting to know how that happened. He says, our protagonist has grown a lot, and become a man. He almost didn't recognize him. Apparently, he must have gone through a lot of changes. Galleon says it's nothing remarkable, but Siegfried disagrees, saying, our boy has really changed. Now he will take the young man inside. Watching all of this, the butler is really happy. Siegfried says that the great mage has chosen an excellent student, one who is not only a mage but also one of the 6 great master swordsmen of the continent. Of course, Siegfried would recognize it. He hasn't trained all these years for nothing. He admits, our boy still can't see Siegfried's aura, but Siegfried can see the protagonist's aura without any difficulty. He says again that this is a huge improvement, and his master must be very pleased. Since it's late, Siegfried can't stay to talk and has to say goodbye, but it's okay. Galleon realizes he arrived earlier than expected. His host knows he will continue on and wishes them safety. Our boy's master drinks some wine, saying his disciple has arrived safely in the land of the elephants. With him is the king, who looks very worried because future problems are worrying him. The archmage quickly realizes he's thinking about the succession. Galleon is the last of his sons who still has to perform this rite of passage. Soon they will all be eligible for the throne. Randall is too mysterious. Blanche is very strong but also stubborn. And our boy still needs to show what he can do. Alan says the king should appoint the least favorite son as the heir. Then, the brothers will conspire against him, and the problem will solve itself. One thing this mage is sure of: our protagonist is still in the race. One day the king will see what this boy is hiding. But until then, he shouldn't worry about abstract future things. Everything will happen the way it's supposed to. Galleon is about to enter that mysterious cave. After walking for a few minutes, he feels completely lost. He doesn't even know how deep it is anymore. Then, his face is illuminated by an intense light. Galleon seems to be transported to another place. A meadow full of flowers. He can't tell where he is until his eyes catch something terrifying. It's as if its magical force can't even be measured. A presence that would make anyone fearful. Galleon bows before it because he's sure it's not just a single will. It's the great Siphanian, the entity he came to meet. The villagers working in the village were shocked. A huge mysterious beam of light appeared among the mountains. It was our boy introducing himself to that entity. He was only supposed to meet the will of the goddess, but she decided to appear in her original form. Overwhelming, suffocating. The goddess quickly realizes this child carries memories from another reality. He has turned her blessing into a weapon, and now she's wondering what drives him. Moving closer, she says he has been summoned to that place. Back in the city, people are still worried about what it could be because it's the young prince's rite of passage. The butler is also worried, because something like this has never happened before. Siegfried comes to see his son and asks if he really cares that much about our protagonist. The boy asks if his father should go check those lands. He did, but he finished quickly, and the day's surprises are not over yet. A little girl with very strange hair introduces herself. Her name is Veronica, and she's the granddaughter of our boy's master. She came with her mother, Rachel. Our boy is still being examined by the goddess. With a simple touch, she has access to all his memories, including the axis of time. Now she understands what's happening. But when she tries to tell him some things, her voice can't be heard. Sifanian realizes what's happening and says that woman doesn't want this to happen. They are talking about Serenity, the queen of the gods. She fought against the void in the Great War along with the 8 great heroes. After the battle, she fell into a deep sleep, but she is still alive. Sifanian says, our boy needs to ask the right questions. So, he mentioned the axis of time and said he wants to understand why in his past life they wanted that object. But again, he can't hear the goddess's words. Sifanian says, our boy's impatience doesn't align with Serenity's will. He wants to know about the things that happened after his first death, and knowing that too soon will change the course of everything. Our boy realizes that if Serenity is intervening, it's because it's necessary, a sign that this is bigger than him. So, he asked one last question. He wanted to know if it was his brother who used the artifact to bring him back to life. Ji-hin says, that man was a king before he was a brother, and he shouldn't be considered a fool. No one would change the natural order of things just for the protagonist's life. Galleon understands that it wasn't Chase who manipulated time, and his heart is filled with doubts. The goddess asks our boy to show what he has. Galleon is confused because he thought he had nothing. Then, he remembers that small artifact. The goddess examines it, and again her words can't be heard. After examining our protagonist, she advises him to keep that artifact, promising that he will find out everything when the time is right. He shouldn't be disappointed just because he didn't hear what he wanted in that meeting. He should come back when he truly believes the time has come. A flock of carrier pigeons flies over the city to spread the news of the large light that appeared during our protagonist's ceremony. Siegfried has never seen so many pigeons in his territory. He's finally being scolded by his own daughter, who says he shouldn't be idle right now. Her name is Diria, and she's already an influential leader. Siegfried says it's fine, even if he does nothing. His daughter says everyone wants the power they have, and they need to be very careful about who is on their territory. Her concern makes Siegfried happy, because she's very smart. She inherited that from her mother. Thank God. However, they are a family of protectors, not rulers. Even if she agrees, she feels that different times are coming. The two of them watch the protagonist's figure through the window. Siegfried promises he will find out which families are in the area so his daughter won't worry anymore. The butler is happy to see all those pigeons. He had intentionally mentioned it to his father, saying he even saw Hawk. The goddess's message told our boy to come back when he's ready, still not leaving his mind. His thoughts are interrupted by the butler, who brings some tea and says, our boy hasn't left the window this whole time. He asks if Galleon found anything interesting in that territory. Galleon says, the interesting thing can't be seen from there. The butler goes to the window and sees Hina and her brother. They are playing with the Siegfried family's dog, named Jan. Since it's the same name as the butler, he's angry that his father had that brilliant idea. But they quickly realize Hina really loves animals. Maybe they can adopt a dog at the palace. They'll need to teach it sign language so Hina can communicate with it. The butler's fluent in that form of communication because of his sick brother. Galleon apologizes for mentioning such a sensitive thing, but the butler says it's been a long time. And besides, now he has our boy. However, if the protagonist decides to adopt a dog, it will cause problems with his brothers. Galleon is ready to go to Camon, and he knows it's the crown prince's city. It sounds like he wants to become the successor just to have a dog. That's when our boy says he's also the only heir who has seen Sifanian in her true form. In a room elsewhere, a woman is having her hair brushed. The letters that were sent have reached their destination, which makes this woman very excited. Our boy had a little trouble talking to his master. He needed to find a place not under the goddess's power, but he found one, the family cemetery, discovered by the butler himself, which allowed communication to happen without problems. Ellen wants to know how the ceremony went for our boy, and she quickly finds out everything was fine, but she still wants details. She's shocked to hear that Galleon saw the goddess in her original form. She should have been there at that moment. The truth is, our protagonist was also overwhelmed. He was told to come back when he's ready. Now that Landon is gone, they need to keep an eye on the queen, who received a visit from him that morning. But that noble will certainly not say anything about what happened, because the negotiation between him and the mage is protected by a pact. A bit risky, but Ellen is good at this kind of thing, and her student is also bold, and he did it. Landon is a problem of the past now, so Galleon doesn't need to worry about anything else. He was one of the queen's agents who did her dirty work. The mage found a letter that might interest our boy. Silas tried to contact the count. She's desperate to reach her allies. The problem is Ivan's eldest son, who is also one of the 6 great master swordsmen on the continent. While defending the border, he was injured, and he intends to recover in the capital. A pretty obvious excuse, because he's clearly coming to negotiate. Our boy is very interested in meeting him. Later, Siegfried invites our boy to sit on a log and rest for a bit. They use the time to talk about the ceremony. Our boy didn't just hear the goddess's will. Siegfried is very impressed that he saw her in person, and he's very happy about it, knowing she's still alive. His family has protected that cave for 500 years. A dragon's nest that many people claimed wasn't even real. It turns out they were wrong. Their determination to protect that place has really paid off. Talion says he will return soon to talk to her again, and having a teleportation gate there would be extremely useful. Siegfried asks if the king would approve of such a thing, because it could leave the capital wide open. Talion assures that access will be restricted, and if it becomes a danger, it can be destroyed. As long as the king approves, Siegfried has no objection. Our boy has another request. Siegfried assumes it's about a sparring match, but that's not what he meant. Using his aura, Talion creates a kind of crystal in one hand. Siegfried realizes it's a magic core made entirely of aura. Talion reshapes it into a sword. He definitely wants to test how strong that weapon is in actual combat. Siegfried is ready to help with the test. It doesn't look like it, but the old man is the 2nd strongest master swordsman on the continent, and also the 2nd most experienced on the path of the sword. A fearsome opponent. His blade is heavy and also fast. Talion is pushed back by his attacks. Still, Siegfried is impressed with the young man's skill. Even if he's not as strong, his agility is incredible. Manifesting that sword must be burning through his mana, and Siegfried isn't holding back in this sparring session. Our protagonist's talent only excites Siegfried more. He's not like the weak child from before at all, but they've just found a limit. Siegfried knows the child is not a real challenge yet. It's time to handle the training session properly. The old man launches a powerful blow, and our protagonist repels it, finding an opening for a clean counterattack. The blade grazes the old man's neck dangerously. Talion realizes he's done something really stupid. Siegfried is now radiating a huge amount of power, ready to show the child his place in the world. In the end, the aura sword is destroyed, but what surprises Siegfried is that he actually injured our boy a little. They don't even have time to talk about it. There's a crowd of people watching, really curious. Moreover, the old man's sword was cracked, and there's a wound on his neck. The commander and Siegfried's knights didn't expect anything like this. Later that day, they have a party. The old man shows he can play the violin very well, which impresses our protagonist. Talion is still upset about the injury he caused. The old man's only concern is how much he scared his son, who is more worried about the protagonist's condition. Talion thanks him for the sparring session, confirming it was a great opportunity, because now he knows how durable his energy sword is. After seeing Siegfried's power, he understands he still has a long way to go. The old man listens carefully, then jokes and asks how the cut on the child's face is. He says he went a little too far, but he had to react to the protagonist's speed. The two of them continue to exchange compliments. Siegfried says those techniques are quite common in the swordsmanship of the Sigrid Knights. That comment really panics our protagonist. Siegfried says it would be hard to get that habit while training in this region. The Empire's technique relies heavily on footwork, but observing the protagonist's movements, he noticed he rotates his shoulder blades a lot. Siegfried tells him to be more careful because people like Berezin will easily notice the difference. Our boy asks if Siegfried wants to know who he really is. The old man says he's on his own land. He has no interest in knowing who is wearing Talien's skin. He just wants them to spar again. Our boy thanks him for that. He asks if Gray can feel the aura he has now. Rumor has it that Gray's father is not satisfied with his abilities, but even so, he can still see the protagonist's power. So, the child needs to be prepared for any possibility. Talion understands he can't just sit still. After 10 days in that land, Ellen asks if our boy wants to return. The truth is, the protagonist wants to stay a little longer, and he asks if Gray has arrived in the capital yet. Still no news, but our boy decides to wait. Talion is a mage who is also a master swordsman, something the world doesn't know. If Gray tries to sense his aura, it will bring a lot of unwanted attention. According to Arson, there are ways to hide mana with spells, and he's willing to help our boy with that. They also start studying the teleportation circle with Veronica and Rachel. The Artemida's daughter-in-law is very talented. She dedicates her entire being to teleportation research. Our boy has a lot of ideas to share with Rachel and Arson. They start working immediately. While our boy learns to hide his mana, the spell itself isn't the hard part. The hard part is keeping it active. Siegfried is the only one there who can tell if our boy's aura is leaking. So, he can't leave the castle until the training is over. A lot of training and work sessions take place until our boy finally gets what he wants. No one could imagine he could use a sword like a master. It's time to go again. Siegfried says goodbye, saying he won't go easy next time they train. Our boy says he has no intention of remaining an easy opponent. Now they need to return to the capital. The mysterious man also gets the news. Surrounded by women, he has learned exactly what needs to be done. It's time for him to return to the capital. This is Count Greyberson. Ellen can't stop being surprised by our boy. He has collected a huge treasure, exploring land that wasn't even supposed to be fertile. The Baron was really a good choice, and what once belonged to Pyrrhus now belongs to them. The protagonist is really good at this. A maid asks if she can lock that door, and the mage allows it. Walking through the corridors, he bumps into someone, the king's eldest son. A surprising coincidence for the Archwitch. Still, he's polite in front of him, saying, "It's been a long time." Blanche is wondering if he's the one who changed our protagonist, or maybe because he changed so suddenly, he sought guidance from someone. But no matter what he does, Blanche can't get an answer from anyone. Ellen says he also has a lot of questions, since the prince has stopped drinking and he must be taking things that make him think too much. Blanche realizes more people remember the drunk version of him. Still, the mage agrees that people change, overcoming fears and challenges, and stopping themselves from falling into reckless urges. How it happens isn't always important. Blanche seems disappointed with that answer. As the mage walks away, Blanche knows that the comment about being reckless was aimed at his past actions. It's been 20 days since our boy left Siegfried's land on his journey. They've changed their route a bit because Veronica's horses look tired. Rachel's acceleration magic was too intense for them. The Viscount in that land seems reasonable, and the butler believes it's good that they stopped there. While our boy is resting a bit, a loud noise catches his attention. It's exactly what he needed. So, he asks his butler to send a message. The message is sent. Our boy wants to be introduced to the guests who have just arrived. That makes the Viscount a bit uneasy. He's hosting people from Barrison, and even though he's a sober person, he knows they don't like the third prince. He considers sending the guests away, but the butler continues the message. If Grey is among them, Gallion wants to invite him for tea. The Viscount is relieved because what happens next isn't really his business anymore. Finally, it's time for the two of them to be introduced. Grey accepts the invitation for tea, and it's time for them to get to know each other better. When they exchange their first look, Grey says he's recovering from a shoulder injury, so he doesn't feel like he can stand up and bow to our boy. Only one noble family can sit in the presence of royalty, and they belong to Siegfried. Grey thinks he's being understood, saying he's in a lot of pain. But our protagonist tells him to bow because that's something he can do. Even the butler feels the air grow heavy. He's afraid something might happen to our boy, believing he still has a weak body. Arson catches a butler spying behind the door. Updating the others, he says they need to be on alert. An interesting guest has arrived. Before he can say who it is, Hina approaches them with tear-filled eye. The butler tells her to calm down and explain what happened. It seems something happened to Kiri and the knights outside. Arson decides to go out there to find out what's happening, but the butler advises him not to act first. The mage continues on, aware of the responsibility he carries. More and more worried, the butler realizes it's only a matter of time before something bigger happens. Grey is not happy at all about being ordered to bow. Gallion says that behavior is extremely disrespectful. The prince won't say it twice. Absolutely furious, Grey stands up, and once again Gallion tells him to bow, but this time he says it with a bit of his sinister energy. According to the butler, the two of them met a long time ago. For Gallion, that makes sense. It explains this man's arrogance, and he must have been shocked by the change in behavior. Now, it's a question of whether he'll take the bait and try to attack someone he can't beat. Gallion wants, with every molecule and atom in his body, for that noble to choose violence. Grey starts to realize the rumors about our boy might be true, but he's stubborn. The host of that meeting, scared out of his mind, tells Grey to be more respectful. After that scolding, things could have gotten worse, which our protagonist deeply regrets, because that man was on the verge of his own death, even if he thought it wouldn't happen. Suppressing his rage, Grey bows politely. Gallion says he's tired now, and they'll continue the meeting another time. That only makes Grey angrier, but before leaving the room, Gallion tells the host to take good care of the count. because he looks a little unwell. The comments have completely crushed Gray's ego, but the attention quickly shifts outside. A large fire has just broken out. It was Arsen's magic. As an ice specialist, he would never use such an explosion, unless, of course, it was to warn our boy. The mage had blown up a carriage with a fireball. Arsen still doesn't know exactly what's happening, but he tells Curie that our protagonist won't be happy about this. The other knights are angry. On one hand, they say he destroyed an important person's carriage. On the other, Arsen says they provoked someone who serves someone even more important. They are the third prince's staff, and Count Gray's dog should learn to respect them. The knights decide to confront that argument head-on, but our protagonist arrives just in time to confirm they are, in fact, dogs. In front of the prince, they become nervous. Our boy asks the mage if he needs to be compensated for the damage. Arsen says it won't be necessary. He'll pay for it himself from his own reserve, so that's settled. Thalion believed nothing serious happened, but then he starts to notice Hina is missing. She's always near her brother. Arsen says those men tried to grab the girl for some fun. Thalion starts smiling like a complete psychopath. Now he's burning with rage, ready to finish off those knights. When Gray comes out, it's too late. His knights' tongues have been cut. Arsen says they no longer belong to the knightly order, because they did something unforgivable to one of the prince's servants. Gray feels even more humiliated after all that. Some commoners have witnessed everything. Thalion says his mage will reimburse the destruction of the carriage when they get to the capital, but that's the last straw for the stupid noble. Thalion asks if his entourage has anything to say about it. Curie is completely silent, because he has seen too much humiliation caused by his mute sister. Now the prince is also worried about her health, which is more than he could have ever dreamed of. Still full of anger, Thalion orders his entourage to hold their positions. That night, Thalion tries to relax a little, drinking some tea. With him is the host of those lands, who has judged all that behavior as reckless because the count is absolutely furious, and he might even try to attack the prince on the road. That would be extremely dangerous because he's a master swordsman. But what that noble doesn't know is that our protagonist has measured his aura, and at best, they are on equal footing. Our protagonist would fight him wearing only swim trunks with a knife in hand, and it still wouldn't be a problem. So, he tells the host that a confrontation doesn't worry him. The words are so honest they surprise the host, because our boy truly believes it. The prince's composure has impressed him. Still, he has one more thing to say. It's about Curie. He's been running laps around the training ground. He asks if our boy really intends to let him do that all night. Thalion says yes, because that guy needs to learn a lesson. They both have their own responsibilities, and our boy is trusting his safety to him. Curie needs to be a competent person. The noble understands that it's not just a punishment. The mage who was burned in the carriage wasn't punished. Curie was punished for lack of trust, not for bad behavior. Thalion expects complete trust from everyone who works for him. That makes the noble feel a little jealous, because it's a privilege to serve a master like that. Thalion finds out that Gray had asked to borrow the Viscount's carriages, but they were all broken, so it couldn't be done. Too convenient. And yes, it was really just an excuse from the Viscount. He said his lands were very modest. He couldn't afford to lose a carriage, so he didn't lend it. Our boy took the opportunity to make an invitation. Giving him a letter, he says that the noble can request an audience whenever he wants. Thalion also says he wants a companion on the road to the capital. Receiving the letter, the Viscount promises he will be ready to leave with our boy. In the capital, Blanche is talking to his mother for the first time in 5 months, and the first thing she mentions is our boy. Blanche asks why she's remembering the protagonist, and Silas says Gray will be arriving soon. And it seems Blanche can't envision the path the queen has laid out for him, which makes the prince ask what she means. Silas says he's acting like a child. Being loud doesn't change the fact that he's wrong. When Gray arrives, Blanche needs to do everything he can to keep him quiet. Observing the queen closely, he says some people become unrecognizable while others are incapable of changing. Silas slyly tells the boy not to try too hard. Blanche says he could give her the same advice, but to avoid trouble, he'll do nothing, just as she wants. Contacting his master, Thalion says they will arrive soon. He's told the king wants to accelerate the formation of the Mage Corps. After the coming-of-age ceremony, yes, Thalion has gained a lot of notoriety, and with Gray being humiliated, they need to be careful. The Knights of Paul will be restrained. Ellen realizes that's basically a declaration of war against the House of Berezin, but the king is doing it to protect his son. The problem is, the king is now in danger. The Mage Corps will be presented when the prince arrives, and a ceremony will take place a week later. Thalion is very worried. Even with his master's protection, the king will still be in danger. especially with Gray in the capital. Our boy's butler says there's another route to their destination. Knowing that, Callion is ready to accept new risks, because he needs to get to the Empire's capital first. Meanwhile, Gray is riding in a carriage for women, which only makes him angrier. He's told their procession is being followed. It's our protagonist approaching very fast. Gray doesn't know how the prince got there so quickly. It must be some kind of magic trick. Callion says that fool still doesn't know how to treat a noble, which has pushed the man's rage to its limits. He's tired of being scolded by our protagonist. It's time to wipe the floor of that place with our boy's blood. A huge explosion happened, and to Gray's surprise, he's being choked. Callion is slowly strangling the bastard. Summoning his energy sword, Callion says, there's only one person who has to be responsible for all this, because honor demands he protect his reputation. In front of everyone, he has punished the noble for insubordination. Oh Lord, they don't even show what the guy's wound is, but he's on the ground begging for mercy. Callion asks if he still hasn't wondered why his brother disappeared. A large sum of money was delivered to Marquis Barrison, and then Lannon and the troublemaker disappeared. Maybe the same thing is about to happen now with the eldest son. Callion makes it clear he doesn't have much patience, so he'll only ask once who attacked the boy that day. Completely compliant, Gray says it was Marquis Van, his own father, which saddens our protagonist to see that father being so cruel to his own children. Looking at that noble's servants, Callion says they should also support that version of events. Still horrified, they also say they are not going to the capital. What happened there was just a small family disagreement. Our protagonist is being followed. Kiri is hiding in the forest. This was also done for him. As for the boy's past actions, all has been forgotten. Callion says his subordinate used to know him better. Finding it strange, Kiri asks when that happened. Our boy decides to tell the truth, but they have plenty of time. When he arrives in the capital, the protagonist's presence is celebrated because the dragon revealed itself to him. Everyone is saying he will succeed to the throne. Finally, our boy has met the rest of his family. He greets his brothers very politely, and the two respond with a certain indifference, especially Planche, who still seems very curious as he returns the greeting. Callion can't even believe it's happening. This is completely unexpected. It must be some kind of sneaky plan. During the meal, the king starts talking to his sons. He hears Randall is still reading a lot. For our protagonist, that family gathering is the strangest thing he's ever done in his life. The king, who used to be completely indifferent, now seems very friendly. One of the servants has to interrupt the meal, bringing an urgent message for the king. He asks the woman to come in. Observing Planche's reaction, our protagonist already knows who it is. The queen has also come to see them. After being greeted by our boy, the queen walks past him, indifferent. She asks if the trip went smoothly, and Callion says it was safer than expected. Celis says she was worried. She was afraid he would return sick. Callion replies that the last time he got sick, he ended up even stronger. There were almost no problems outside the castle walls. Knowing what happened during his coming-of-age ceremony, Celis becomes a bit uneasy. His reputation has reached even the Empire's capital, so she gets straight to the point. She asks if the king intends to make the protagonist the heir to the throne, a question that has surprised everyone there. Callion realizes this is a desperate move by the queen. The king says he had a conversation in the presence of the Archmage, and the suggestion was to appoint the least favorite son as the heir. That would solve the problem of the most troublesome one. But there isn't a single one of the king's children he doesn't care about. And because of everything the queen has done, the king is thinking about making his decision. Celis slams her hand on the table in a rage, saying the king will regret it because he's destroying everything she has built. She storms out, and the king apologizes to Planche for what he had to hear because those words were not meant for him. Knowing what happened with his own brother, the king says he doesn't want that future for any of his sons. They can't make the same mistakes that family made. After turning 20, the princes who are not heirs must leave the palace. They can only visit the capital for 5 days, and they also can't have their own army. Now we are introduced to the protagonist's uncle, Asnion, the author of a rebellion, when the king ascended the throne, which ultimately failed. He is now imprisoned in a tower in the Varekan Valley. Our boy knows his father wants everyone to live well. His butler starts to ask if that's possible. But even our protagonist doesn't have an answer until he sees a mysterious rose on his way. But the flower isn't the only strange thing that happened there, because it was glowing in the dark. The butler points to the protagonist's pocket, which is also glowing. It's that mysterious artifact. Although all the other roses have disappeared, that flower is the only one left. Callion decides to interact with the flower. When he touches the petals, they wither, and the flower disappears completely. The strange light of the artifact also disappears. Galleon starts to connect everything the time, and that artifact. He heard from Zephanian that he's very impatient now, but it's hard for him to shake these thoughts because his desire for answers is so great. 2 days pass, and the butler says our boy has skipped breakfast both days. Galleon says he still feels very tired, thinking about a lot of things. Our boy tries to sleep, but he realizes he has an unexpected visitor. The person at the window notices our boy's magical power is real. A light breeze is enough to wake him. Getting out of bed, Galleon says, it's too late for guests. It was Planche who came. Planche says, a rose has gone missing from the garden, and that must have been the protagonist's doing. For privacy, Galleon has erected a barrier to completely block the sound of their conversation. He says his brother must be very interested in that rose to come all this way. Planche says it's not an ordinary flower. Now Galleon is thinking maybe that's why our boy skipped breakfast, and he becomes certain his brother knows something. Randall is also a person of divine blood, and that rose is connected to the divine power in his blood. But when Planche asked Randall why the flower didn't disappear, Planche got no answer at all. Galleon starts to wonder if his brother is really that stupid, expecting a clear answer for no reason. Planche knew only divine power could make that rose last so long, but he didn't understand why. Randall decided to hide it. That surprises the protagonist when he finds out Randall can use divine power. Since something happened, Planche decides to take the blame, saying he burned the rose, letting our protagonist pretend to be clueless. But before he can leave the room, Galleon stops him, wanting to know what he's doing. Planche believes our boy is skipping breakfast to hide the fact that he's bothered by this. But Gallion's real question is why his brother decided to help him. They are not close enough for that. Those words make Planche realize his brother still remembers. So, he says that even if Randall has some kind of power, they won't win. Galleon is now incredibly shocked by those words. It seems our boy is being helped because Randall has no chance against the queen. Finally, our protagonist realizes the obvious. His eldest brother never wanted to be the next king. Their conversation has left our boy in deep thought, thinking about that flower and the mysterious artifact he received. Galleon wants to understand how they are all connected. To achieve his true goal, he needs to strip even more power from the queen. Time is running out. Learning what happened to Gray, Silas is absolutely furious, because he was seriously injured. He couldn't even enter the capital. The news that reached her was that Marquis Suven was responsible for the attacks. Silas can't understand why a father would do that to his own son. It seems it was an internal family dispute. Gray wanted his father's position, and the truth is, it was a secret deal between him and the queen. With Gray's help, Silas would also help him. She believes her plan hasn't been discovered. The problem is, her brother is a master swordsman. He shouldn't have been injured so easily, so Silas decides to send him some medicine, and she's determined to find out everything that happened in that incident. The queen's rage is growing. Whatever happened, it was a strategic move by a master, and Silas is still not willing to give up. The queen finally meets a knight and gives him a bag full of coins. He thinks it's a very generous gesture. Sammy is the vice commander of the Pile Knights. No one can see his true nature, and the queen knows he's a cold-blooded assassin. Now, it's a matter of what his next job will be. Silas wants to find out what happened to Gray, and if it was one of our protagonist's bodyguards. When the person responsible is found, he needs to be silenced forever. If that happens, Town will get another bag of money. All he needs is the guard's name. The queen says it's arson, but deep down she's sure it's the protagonist. The rumor about what happened to Gray spread throughout the capital. And that day, the king summoned all the nobles to court because he had an important announcement. He says they have ignored magic until now, but it's time to change course by establishing a mage corps. The nobles are shocked because it puts the power of the knightly families at risk. Bakken is the name of this division, and in a week, it will be inaugurated. They will use the old facilities of the Powell Knights. After that announcement, the king asks to be left alone for a bit, but he ends up meeting our protagonist, who knows this will upset the nobles. Galleon wants to know if his father is okay, but the king assures him it's not his son's job to worry about that. Our boy took advantage of being alone to bring up another topic. He wants to talk to the knightly families. The king finds that strange but soon realizes his son wants to build allies. Risky put brave. That has impressed the king enough for him to tell his son to do what he wants. This is also being done so he won't become the focus of the Buren family. Galleon also suggests they go hunting soon with his eldest brother. Upon hearing the news, the butler is happy because our protagonist is building his own political faction. Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of Arson, looking clearly exhausted, but it seems he has found a solution to the teleportation problem. It's the same logic as a magic seal, an impact between the traveler and the gate. Kalyan wants to know the details, but he'll hear them soon, because he told the mage to rest a bit. Arsene says he needs to talk to Ellen immediately about this discovery, but the protagonist insists he must rest. Since he's so tired, Arsene has no strength to argue. Kalyan quietly tells Arsene not to fall asleep on the way back. But inside the carriage, the mage has completely fallen asleep. He remembers the protagonist's words and jolts awake just as his procession is ambushed. Some men are approaching. Arsene tells the driver to speed up and not look back. A weapon is thrown at the mage, but he manages to defend himself. Somehow, Arsene had anticipated something like this. And as a member of the newly formed Valkon, he's more than ready to have a little fun. Kalyan is in the middle of a party with his master, who has noticed Arsene's absence. Our boy says he must be busy with his own responsibilities, because what happened with Grey has become public, and the queen will make a move. She can't be happy now because she's lost a major ally. Only with Yvain's death can his son inherit the title. As things stand, Silas can't say for sure if her father will intervene in what happened. She will need time to sort out her thoughts. He also has no idea what Arsene is capable of. And our main dude is sure that Arsene can handle a few nights on his own. The last face our boy saw in his previous life was Arsene's. And in every respect, that has eventually turned into admiration. Right now, the extras are being brutally killed. The assassin is completely horrified because that mage is insanely strong, able to cast spells in the blink of an eye. Their only chance is to close the distance. So, he cheers on his men with the reward they're supposed to get, but their attacks are completely blocked by a magical barrier, which only speeds up the death of a few more of them. They quickly realize they shouldn't have taken that contract. Sending a group of 10 against an opponent like this is ridiculous. Arsene notices the men are trying to flee, so he blocks the path of the only one left alive, the one responsible for the ambush. The corrupt knight kneels and starts begging for mercy, saying he can tell the prince everything he knows. Arsene says he better be more specific if he wants to keep on living. So, the knight admits it was orchestrated by the queen. One of her maids works for our boy, and she will be executed if anything happens. Looking at that money bag, Arsene says his master isn't too keen on remembering certain things. Completely desperate, the knight says he knows where the Marquis's money comes from. A secret illegal case in it. They make money from rigged bets and matches, but our main dude already knows that place, and he has someone with renowned expertise in it. It seems the knight has nothing else to offer. He finally says that the Marquis hasn't held a sword in years, and the sword he used to use is completely broken. Arsene says that detail might make the young prince curious. The knight also says the conflict between Yvain and his son is real, but the mage is fed up and decides to behead the extra because that mouth has said all it needed to say. Arsene needs to find a way back to the palace, because the carriage has moved on, and he doesn't want to waste a whole week on the trip. Then, he starts to hear the sound of galloping horses. Soon, our boy has that money bag, and it has caused a huge chain reaction. Now, Marquis Yvain is being accused of trying to attack Arsene on the road. The royal knights were outside waiting for him. Yvain is furious. He thinks he knows why this is happening. It's because of the king and his mages. He asks where Tail, his knight, is and is told Tail was found at the crime scene. Furthermore, he has been summoned by the queen herself. Yvain is determined to go to the palace. The butler asks if he wants to inform the queen of his visit. Still furious, Yvain says if he does, he will punish his daughter, because she's not the one he wants to talk to. He wants to talk to our main dude. At lunch with the family, they are told a master of Vulcan has gone missing. Randall is the one who says it, and he thinks our main dude must be very worried. With a wide smile, Kalyan says the king, and Ellen should be more worried about it. Blanche is completely indifferent, and the hunting day has been set. Looking at Randall, Blanche asks if he's joining, but that prince has no plans because he thinks the king arranged it with the eldest son in mind. Blanche tries to convince him to go out and get some fresh air, but is ignored. To make matters worse, he doesn't seem like the type of person who enjoys hunting. Kalyan doesn't know if his eldest brother is doing all this just to help him. And right at that moment, gathered with his brothers, he feels something strange. It's his own master, and something has made Ellen extremely annoyed. Not long ago, Ellen went to see Marquis Yvain. Ellen asks if he feels any grief for losing so many subordinates, especially since he still has to appear at court. For Yvain, that sounds like a provocation. He says the mage's presence there is only tolerated because of the king's favor. Ellen replies that at least one person in that conversation is enjoying royal favor. Furious, Yvain says he already knows who has been a bad influence on the young prince. Getting closer to the point, Ellen says the king and the prince are more reliable than a knightly clan whose 10 men were defeated by a single mage. Ellen leans down and whispers in Ivan's ear, asking how much the bribe was this time, saying Ivan must be earning more now than when he sold his own son. That really enrages Ivan, and he unleashes his full aura. Ellen is not intimidated by it. He unleashes a power even greater than the nobles. And now he will show him that some things have been forgotten. It's time to remember his place. The flames of that energy look like they're devouring Ivan. Ellen tells him to think before he acts because he doesn't know who he's talking to. That brief exchange has left the noble breathless, threatening. Ivan says Ellen may be strong, but he's alone and he won't last long. But the mage assures him that he is not alone in this fight. He asks if the Marquis knows why Grey was sent away. Maybe Grey received an irresistible offer because he's also a corrupt noble. Ivan starts to think about what his daughter might have done. That would explain a lot of the problems he's currently facing. Gallian observes the two of them talking from a palace balcony. By the looks of it, Ivan is really going to meet our main dude, and he's furious. What Ivan really wants to find out is how Blanche's relationship with the queen is, but things change too quickly. He won't be able to see his grandson now until he finds out which side the boy is really on. Just as Ivan decides to leave, it starts to rain. Gallian realizes the hunt might not happen because of the weather. He asks his brother what he thinks about it all. Blanche says he heard about a message that morning, ordering some knights. Gallian assumes Blanche must have felt the conflict between the two manas that morning, a sign that the king was right. The boy has good sword skills. Wanting to know more, Gallian asks if his brother talks to Ivan often. Blanche says he's never met him alone, which is exactly what our main dude expected because that family is full of schemes. Maybe that's why Ivan wanted to visit him. He surely wants to strip the queen of her noble title, hoping his grandson might receive the title of the crown. If Ivan's goal is just to push the queen off the board, then he doesn't need to continue helping our main dude. But if he wants to be the next king, he should meet Ivan immediately. Looking seriously at our main dude, Blanche says he has given a very clear answer. Now they need to talk about something urgent, the queen's situation. She might make some really stupid decisions, but our main dude is ready for it, and he doesn't want to shelter her from the consequences of those actions. If Blanche is going to be a real ally, he needs to be ready for what's coming. Blanche takes our main dude's hand and agrees because he doesn't want to be used as the queen's puppet anymore. The news of their alliance reaches the butler, and he is shocked. It means the eldest son has turned his back on the queen, and in theory, he has no reason to. Gallian says his brother hasn't turned his back on anyone. He just closed his heart to the mother he finally had. The queen never realized how toxic she was to him, which is why the guy was an alcoholic. And here's the surprising truth. He's not even an alcoholic. He just dirties himself with wine. His breath is always fresh. It was all to ruin his own image. Every time he disrespected our main dude, it was in front of an audience. He did it in the hope the queen would give up on him, but it never were. And desperate for power, Silas has reached a point of no return. Only death will stop her. Even after hearing all that, the butler still doesn't understand why this sudden alliance happened. Our main dude doesn't have an answer for everything either. The only one who could truly understand Blanche has crossed the bridge. The old Gallian is not in those lands. No one can find him. A messenger approaches the king to whisper something. They found a prisoner in the dungeon in Barrison lands. Hearing that, the king is curious. Talking to Ellen, he asks if Ellen has forgotten who he really is, even if he's a laid-back person. He holds the highest title in Vulcan. The king wants to show the court the power he has now. So, he mobilizes the royal guard to intensify the search efforts. Right now, Ivan is facing serious charges because of all this. The same knight who came to talk to the king is the one responsible for bringing that noble in. There are only a few days left until the inauguration of the new mage division. That will shock the nobles with a title granted to Ellen. Ellen has realized the king knows exactly how much the nobles despise him. Ivan especially. The truth is, Ellen was originally a viscount in Liber, but he became famous as a great mage in Sraya. He also holds the title of baron. But of all his titles, he prefers being the young prince's teacher. And from now on, he won't be just that. He will also be known as Count Ellen, a title granted by the king himself. Ellen is immediately surprised, and the king notices it. It was a quite unexpected situation, and it could lead to major consequences. Our main dude realizes the rain has stopped. The hunt will happen. The butler comes to wake our boy and is surprised to see him already up. Gallian had taken a little walk because he needed to resolve a few things. The butler says our boy needs to see something else. They just received some horses as a gift from Baron Poland. Our boy is very impressed with their quality. And that's not all. They also received a cat as a gift, which puzzles our boy a little. He didn't know if he wanted to adopt a dog or a bird, but getting a cat is definitely a good thing. The animal was finally delivered directly to him. A pet like that can stay at the prince's residence, and our boy asks her to be very careful. Hina realizes our main dude had remembered her request, and she's really happy about it. Not long after, she shows her brother what happened. The butler also tells our boy about the king's moves. He has sent troops to the Burian lands. Arson is still missing, but that doesn't worry our boy at all. He just repeats Ellen's words. His subordinate's power is not small. Still, our main dude won't just sit still. A missing Vulcan mage is serious, and it will be treated as such. Anyway, life goes on, and it's time for the hunt. Not everyone knows if Prince Blanche will participate. There are rumors that he's not well. Looking through the window, Blanche remembers a conversation. Our main dude had told him not to participate in the hunt and to say he had a fever. Blanche didn't understand the reason for that plan, especially since he might actually not be well enough to go hunting. Galleon said he would talk to the king about it so he would understand his son's absence. Blanche still can't figure out what our main dude wants. But if it helps him escape the succession conflict, that's fine too. While he's thinking about it, he hears a cat meow. The cat belongs to our main dude and is playing with Hina in the garden. Blanche knows the girl is our main dude's servant, and the path she's taking leads to the rose garden. If he remembers correctly, around that time, Randall used to come to the garden. One of Blanche's guards points a sword at the girl. Rudely, he starts questioning her immediately, asking who she is and how she got there. Hina is terrified, and knows she needs to identify herself. But since the guard probably doesn't know sign language, she thinks about writing on the ground. As soon as she starts to move, the guard becomes even more aggressive because he doesn't know what she's trying to do. Hina panics, because she has no way to write anywhere. That's when someone intervenes, saying, the guard's performance is pathetic. He doesn't recognize a prince's servant. His eyesight must be very poor, or maybe it's his intelligence. Blanche appears and saves the day. Ashamed, the guard apologizes, saying he didn't know she was a servant. Blanche glances at Hina's eyes and tells her to get the cat out of there. She bows respectfully, thanking him for what he did. Randall says he was invited to the hunt by Blanche himself, but neither of them showed up. Blanche didn't expect to meet his brother in the garden, so he starts to apologize. Before leaving, Randall comments that things are getting better between Blanche and our main dude. Out in the forest, the king isn't sure it's the best thing for his sons. While he tries to teach the mage how to use a bow, Ellen asks for silence so he can concentrate. Some nobles are with them, and they don't know why they've been divided into groups. Among them are some who are related to the House of Berrizon. Finally, after a lot of concentration, the mage manages to shoot his arrow, but it can't even fly more than a few meters. The king has to suppress a laugh. Ellen hears it anyway, and tries to justify himself, saying he's a mage who has focused his excellence on other areas of life. The nobles realize the rival hunting group won't be very impressed, and right at that moment, the bird Ellen was trying to hunt is taken down. They can't even see the arrow. Ellen says there's no rule against using magic. He asks the king if that's true, and the king immediately confirms. Then, the king asks if his mage wants to hunt those people too. The nobles realize they are completely defenseless. This is just a warning to that mage and the king. They are no different from that bird. It's time for them to think about what they're going to do with their lives. Galleon says he will soon be hunting a different kind of creature, and that's why he needs those men's help. When they meet again, it will be at the palace. The queen has just read a letter that infuriated her. It was Gray's response. The news was devastating. He can't use aura anymore, and the queen was asked not to disturb him at this time. On her table is the same bag of money that was given to that corrupt knight. The bag was found at Arson's last known location. Our main dude was the one who returned it to her. The queen tried to pretend she knew nothing, but our boy knew she had met the corrupt knight. Silas insisted on lying just because a mage had disappeared. She said our main dude was panicking. She asked if Callion had negotiated with Gray. Our boy told her she was completely delusional and that he didn't need people like her or her family. Silas scolded him, saying he needed to be more polite. Our boy promised that soon she would have to pay for what she had done. The queen's end was near, and Callion assured her he would be the one responsible for it. Remembering that conversation only made Silas angrier, and she threw that bag of coins on the floor. Completely consumed by rage, Silas realized she had nothing left to lose. It was time to settle things. At night, someone tried to sneak into Blanche's room. The boy woke up immediately, and realized that the mage had snuck past the defenses with ease. It was our protagonist who did it. He promised he wouldn't come in again unless invited. Blanche wanted to know what his brother was doing, and the boy said he had 3 things to say. First, did Randall know they were working together? The answer was yes. Callian didn't expect the news to spread so fast and asked for more details. In the conversation they had in the garden, Blanche had asked if it bothered his blonde-haired brother, and he had said no, confirming to our protagonist that everything was calm. Even knowing Randall wouldn't cause trouble, Callian still wanted to be more careful. Moving on to the next point, he finally thanked Blanche. The prince said he didn't even care about that. Someone must have told him what happened in the garden with the girl and the cat. Thinking back, he knew exactly why he didn't need any thanks. Hina had done a similar thing, and she did it very politely. Now that Callian knew that, he could get to the final point. Since the next day would be the inauguration of Volcan, he wanted his brother to stay sick for 1 more day. Blanche said Callian was being too much. Callian agreed but asked his brother not to interfere in anything that was about to happen. Preparing for the inauguration, the queen is being taken care of. Her maids are wondering if her mood has improved. She has been extremely stressed lately, and it has worried everyone. Maybe the woman should have listened to her father and married some noble in the countryside. Accidentally, a maid pulled the queen's hair too hard. When she tried to apologize, she didn't notice a hand swinging towards her. The queen slapped her without mercy, making the maid beg for forgiveness. Another servant tried to take the blame, saying she hadn't taught the maid properly. Silas took the opportunity to push that woman away even further. Finally, the ceremony begins. A lot of nobles have gathered for it. Ellen announces the establishment of that mage circle, dreamed of by the king and supported by the noble court. It marks the beginning of a new era in the empire. In the middle of the announcement, a huge explosion happens, horrifying everyone. It happened in the queen's quarters. Our protagonist becomes increasingly uneasy. Everyone is saying arson is responsible. It seems the boy didn't expect something like that, and he was deeply shocked. Soon, the nobles also panicked and turned their attention toward our protagonist. He quickly realized this was also the queen setting him up. The king told everyone to calm down. Chaos was exactly what the attackers wanted, so they needed to remain calm. They still didn't know what had really happened, but there was someone there who said she had personally seen the culprit. The woman started moving toward the nobles. It was the queen talking about the identity of the person who blew up her apartment. After the conversations he had with our protagonist, Blanche started to get very confused. Callian said everyone heard the explosion and they were relieved the queen was safe. Callian said the boy was being fake because he was the one behind the attack. Even while being accused, Callian said an investigation was needed. Callian said that before she was attacked, Arson had accused her of staging an ambush, and our protagonist had told him about it. Early that morning, she had planned everything with that maid. She had given her an artifact to place on the vanity. The poor servant couldn't refuse, so she placed that small artifact there, causing a huge explosion that all the nobles could see. Callian said the boy clearly didn't believe her accusation, so he should bring Arson himself there to confirm his innocence. The queen insisted that she saw him place the explosives in her room. It was all her trap for the boy, and he was cornered by the accusation. Then, she was surprised by the appearance of Arson. And to make matters worse, he wasn't alone. The mage greeted the queen with perfect politeness, the same person she had just accused. Callian also didn't know what her father was doing in his company. Only then did she realize our protagonist was playing chess on a completely different level. Her end was happening right at that moment. Back to the day Arson disappeared, he had met Kiri. What he really got was a few days off, but his disappearance had put the Berezin family in a seriously difficult position. He even had no way to dodge those accusations. Arson had come to negotiate with Ivan. Following the prince's instructions, he said the queen would use it to build a conspiracy, so Ivan needed to hide in those lands. In return, Ivan had to support the boy so the false accusations would not continue. Thalian now had a complete strategic advantage. With the king present, he said the investigation should begin immediately. The queen had asked for the mage to appear, and that had just happened. As he passed by her, Callian said he had warned her. Silas shouldn't have been so reckless. Now her own father, the king, and the knights were all against her. Silas started to smile like a completely mad person. She said our protagonist's mother had also been so insolent. Proof they were really alike. She showed she was armed with a knife. And now she tried to attack our protagonist. Blood started to spill all over the floor. No one expected it. The queen couldn't believe the blood she had shed. Even our protagonist didn't see it coming. Blanche had been told not to interfere at all, but he had decided to play the hero. Now the poor guy was about to die. Silas grew even angrier. Realizing she had been betrayed by her own son, she plunged the knife deeper. Talion watched his brother suffer in brutal pain. The king tried to stop it. His knights were mobilized to restrain the queen. Extremely worried, the king told her to stop. The hand holding the knife was severed, leaving the queen in pain and shock. Furious, Talion asked if that insolent woman had heard the king. She had been ordered to let the boy go. The guards had the situation under control. The queen was arrested, and the nobles realized the boy had used an aura sword. That meant he was a master swordsman. In the midst of the chaos, Talion tried to help his brother. Blanche said he was impressed his brother could use it. Right after that, he passed out. Everyone called for a healer. The king was clearly worried about his son. And the same was true for our protagonist. But since they didn't know what might happen next, the king had to be evacuated immediately, something he didn't want to do because he didn't know what would happen to his son. Ellen told him that he had also lost a child. But he was not a king. Much more important things were at stake now, and the prince would handle everything. While the boy performed first aid, he still waited for the healer to arrive. The situation was getting worse. Talion was also angry with his brother. He shouldn't have done that. This was not the time to die. Not under these circumstances, and even the blessing of Sifanian in his blood wasn't helping now. It was only a matter of time before he died. The healer was on her way. Hina was also heading there. Talion remembered that Prince Randall could also be useful in that situation. In moments of chaos, the human heart shows its true intentions. A calculating person like him had just shown what he could do. Talion was angry at that refusal to act, and he desperately wanted his brother to survive. It would be tragic if his life were lost there. Later that day, our protagonist visited someone in prison. It was the queen, who would no longer be clapping. She said she also had a question. She suggested they both be honest for the first time. There was something the boy was still hiding from her, and Silas was absolutely sure of it. Talion told her, everyone has secrets, secrets that no one will ever find out. Now, he also had a question for her, about the death of Queen Aisha, and whether Silas was involved. Showing an even crazier side, Silas said she would never forget. It was the first life she had ever taken by using poison. Enraged by the confession, Talion said there was nothing left to say. Before he left, Silas warned him they had promised to be sincere. After thinking about it, Talion said he honestly expected the queen to ask about her own son's safety. Ignoring what might have happened, Silas said he was just an obstacle until the end. She had tried to do her best for him, but the boy had proven to be a fool. He was never useful for anything, and her imprisonment was proof of that. Our protagonist said people run toward what they want to protect. The way that attack happened showed the queen had never been trained in combat. The boy didn't even have to block it. He could have just stepped aside. He was also protected by magic. Blanche should have known all that, but he still made that choice. Silas wondered if the boy did it to protect her because he had no reason to. Talion said if she hadn't sunk so low, she would have understood her son's reasons, how he had tried to warn her of the danger of those decisions, of her behavior, and of her inability to change. At the peak of her madness, Silas said she didn't regret anything, laughing like something from a nightmare. The nobles still loyal to Bray had switched sides, and the queen's crimes had been exposed. Silas was executed not long after. Her death was also not mourned. According to the traditions of that place, after a week of dismantling her palace, the work was still not finished. People avoided her name. No one wanted to be associated with the queen. Moreover, no one expected the boy to be a master swordsman who could use magic. Since that incident, he hasn't left Blanche's bedside. Blanche finally wakes up and asks why the boy is there with his mouth full of bananas. Talion says he's trying to find a way to explain his sword skills without arousing suspicion. Since he hasn't come to a conclusion, he tells his brother to rest more. Blanche tells him to do it in his own room, but our protagonist asks him to be a little kinder. Talion doesn't want to leave right away to avoid all the questions. More time passes, and even Ellen misses the boy. Talion is finally kicked out of Blanche's room. Blanche has had enough. Considering he was there for 4 days, he admits it was more than generous. Ellen had imagined the boy would stay for another week, and that was the plan. Even the maids are talking about the rumor that our protagonist used an aura sword. For his master, the boy didn't leave just because he was kicked out. He must have come to an interesting conclusion, something that could work for everyone. Talion knows he's a terrible liar, but someone can help him. He goes to the king's office, and the king also can't know the whole truth. Talion tells him that during the protagonist's ceremony, he received a blessing from Sifanian that awakened his master swordsman abilities. Callian will do a little demonstration since he can use aura and magic. He learned a few tricks when shaping that sword. Now the king understands why he was in danger in that situation more than his own son. He also realizes the mage has always known. Callian apologizes and says he should have told him sooner, but the king understands the boy's reasons. The problem is, the nobles want answers, and Vulcan's ceremony has been postponed. It has been suggested that the boy should use that to explain himself. However, the king really wishes he had been informed sooner. Ellen quickly realizes his disciple is really smart for the king. All of this is beneficial. Now that everyone knows his son is a master swordsman, Burzin will be very cautious from now on. Not just him, but Randall too, who has remained calm. Even on that day of crisis, the king worried about the possibility of Randall taking the throne. His thoughts are interrupted by a question, and even with his anxiety, he realizes only time will tell what will happen. After a week, the ceremony takes place again. They also announce the presence of the newest master swordsman. Meanwhile, Burzin completely isolates himself, avoiding all contact. There, the man doesn't stop training with his sword, making even his servants worry. What angers even is knowing that he couldn't see the boy's aura, something that only happens when the opponent is stronger. Finally, winter has come to those lands. Our protagonist's cat is wandering in the garden and meets Blanche. Even when ignoring the animal, the cat affectionately rubs against his leg. The flowers the queen used to grow no longer perfume the air there. The king's birthday is being celebrated, and he's really happy to be surrounded by good friends. Spring has also come to them. A new beginning for all of them. And in the midst of that celebration, a mysterious man has approached. Ellen and his disciple are very surprised because Chase, the protagonist's brother from his past life, is also there. We are taken back 2 months before that event. A lot has changed in the protagonist's life. He feels refreshed in an inexplicable way. Ellen was personally invited to that birthday. The king wanted his friend there because this was his first birthday as a single man. Knowing the party would be wild, Ellen promises he won't leave the area. He also says time flies too fast. Now that they're drinking tea, the king remembers when the mage came to those lands and is eager to see what the new year will bring him. Our protagonist continues to own his abilities, defending fiercely against Arsen's attacks. His aura sword is a fearsome weapon. By manipulating energy, he can turn it into a powerful shield. After defending, he decides to attack, cornering the mage with ease. It was an impressive sparring session done in front of all the other mages in the organization. Callian is impressed with Arsen's teleportation skill, and Arsen is also very impressed with the boy's swordsmanship. His mana control is really refined. He's even more surprised to find out the boy was holding back. The mages who witnessed it now want to learn from Arsen, who doesn't need to chant spells. Blanche also watched the sparring session, and when asked if he liked the show, he said no. Then, the protagonist asks what he wants now, and if he's interested in training those mages. In his past life, Blanche was responsible for strengthening that division, a crucial piece in turning them into the demons they could become. That's why the protagonist made the suggestion. Blanche still seems uninterested. Their conversation is interrupted by the butler, who announces that Marquise even wants an audience. It surely has to do with our boy's aura, and he's on his way to that meeting. Callian tells his brother that everyone knows they are allies now. He can't hide in the shadows forever because soon he might be attacked. After training all winter, he even wants to meet our boy, not knowing that he hides his aura with magic. That alone is enough to make him feel weaker. Still, our boy is stuck because he knows he's not strong enough yet. Another problem is Blanche, who still doesn't have his own faction among the nobles. Another political war is about to break out on this chessboard, and our protagonist needs to keep an eye on one person, Randall. Someone he finally met in that same corridor. Coldly, Randall says he almost wishes he had helped our boy that day. Disregarding a prince is a major taboo in the customs of this place. Callian knows that he stands his ground and says he's only 3 steps away from ending all that arrogance. He mentions the seemingly eternal rose. It seems he has finally understood its meaning. Randall asks if our boy has seen it. Smiling, Callian says he's always thinking about why the rose stands out so much. Maybe it's a sign that flowers will always bloom in his brother's garden as long as they never go beyond his feet. And that's exactly the message he wanted to send. They stare at each other at the end of the conversation. When Ellen hears about it, he gets angry and suggests introducing Randall to Yvonne so they can conspire against the protagonist together, because our boy seems very willing to make enemies. Ellen is angry with his disciple's attitude. But Callian has made it very clear that he doesn't provoke anyone without reason. Now he's sure his brother won't make a move until he's sure there's no chance of an alliance forming between Callian and Yvonne. After everything that has happened, he even will be very cautious, because he can't wait to come see our boy. Blanche has also become an ally. But the reason is the need to seek new alliances, and that doesn't mean our protagonist is on the list. At the illegal fighting arena, people are having fun. A hooded man finally catches attention, and they ask him for the entrance fee. The answer is a sword stroke that separates a head from its body. The order Curie received was clear. Panic starts to spread throughout the place. The only people he's not supposed to touch are those working there against their will. The guards panic, but they are easily cut down. No one is supposed to survive. Fury is carrying out his orders with complete dedication. He goes to the main office and is almost hit in the face for doing so. One of the thugs has taken a girl hostage. Curie is much more skilled now. He knows that girl has agreed to be used as a hostage, so her life doesn't need to be spared. The gangster now has a hole in his chest. He says the person in charge of this place won't let this slide. Curie replies that he doesn't care at all. When the guards arrive, some lives have been taken. Curie gives up his sword, revealing he is a servant of the third prince. The news is spreading fast, and a messenger needs to report what has happened. The underground fighting casino has been attacked. The Marquis needs to know that the messenger's path has eventually been blocked by a few people. Galleon asks where the man is rushing to. Absolutely furious, even scolds his subordinate because all he had to do was report what had happened immediately. Now, even the royal family is involved in the investigation. All of this is because Carrie survived the attack. Galleon has sent a message to that messenger, and while he's being scolded, the messenger says Galleon has failed to pull Blanche to his side. When the attack happened, they were told to blame their prince. Yvan is thinking about that now. He thought the brothers had joined forces, but he might have been wrong. A little calmer, Yvan starts to believe there's still hope, deciding he will meet Blanche the next day. After the meeting takes place, Blanche passes that information to our protagonist. It seems Yvan took the bait they had set. Yvan really tried to convince Blanche to become an ally. The investigation is unlikely to find Yvan responsible for it. The attack only served to diminish his influence. Galleon now wants to know if his brother thought about the offer he received. Blanche says he's ready to put it into action. Our protagonist asks to be reminded of what they had planned. It's about Vulcan. He will be put in charge of that division. Because of the illegal fighting casino, another noble has finally been punished. Curie was suspended for 2 months for using a sword without permission. And that time has finally passed. Our protagonist is woken up by the butler, who wants to know if he wants to rest a little more. Galleon says he had a strange dream. He still has a feeling about it, but he can't remember anything. The butler says it could be a sign of good luck and reports that Curie made a move last night. He says he saw a tinsel procession. It was a diplomatic visit. Blanche finds that really strange because it came with some priests. He had thought about bringing it up with our protagonist immediately. Among those people was also the heir of Sacria. Now the question is what he's doing there. Chase says it's an honor to speak with one of the heirs. Glimpses of the protagonist's past are reflected in the meeting between those two. Chase admits he's far from his lands, but he has business to resolve there. Riding on horseback, our protagonist sees who is there. That seems to explain the feeling he had that morning. This is exactly what was going to happen that day. Ellen was surprised when he found out who was present at the king's birthday. Chase, the heir of Sacria. One thing that made him a little uneasy. Soon, Ellen decided what needed to be done. Meeting our protagonist, he believes his disciple needs to be better prepared for this meeting. He might hesitate too much, feeling the conflicts tied to his past life. Chase was waiting for him inside the Great Hall. Approaching our boy, he reveals he's been waiting to see him for a long time. Galleon is silent for a few seconds, and Chase finds that really strange. Keeping his cool, our boy says he's also been waiting for this meeting. Ellen finally enters the Great Hall. Seeing both princes have already met, he asks why they're almost blocking the entrance. Chase says he hasn't seen the mage in a long time and hopes he's well. While the two continue to talk, our protagonist falls into that internal silence again. He needs to take a deep breath for this meeting. Blanche watches everything closely. For the heir of Sacria to come to those lands, there must be an important reason. Ellen asks what that reason is. Chase realizes he can't hide anything from him. His words might not be worthy of being considered the truth, but he hopes the master will hear him out. Chase returns to the topic of the Axis of Time, which disappeared without explanation. Ellen would never forget that artifact, because he was one of the people responsible for examining it. Now the question is why Chase is talking about it since he was there when the artifact disappeared. Since then, strange memories have been appearing in his head, things he doesn't remember. At first, he thought it might just be a dream. But soon, He started to think he was going crazy until he reached a point where he couldn't deny it anymore. He simply had to accept it. Those memories were real, and he's sure his brother is somewhere in that kingdom. Ellen doesn't doubt him. If anything, he's surprised. So, he asks if Chase used that artifact to bring his brother back. He knew the war was caused by those who wanted to possess the artifact. Baron was one of those who sacrificed himself to protect his ideals, and he would never ignore that sacrifice just to get his brother back. He kept the artifact until the end and never used it for anything. That fits with what Safanian has said so far. Still, Chase remembers his brother's eyes that day, and realizes he can't let him know he knows everything. Just knowing he's okay is a huge relief. Ellen is now incredibly curious about these two brothers, and the path that fate has laid out for them. Kiri finally reports to both of them. He came to deliver a message from the prince, who wants to talk to them after dinner. Ellen realizes he should have used a silencing spell. Carelessly, he asks if Kiri heard anything. When there's no answer, he realizes he shouldn't regret it. He tells Chase that Kiri is the protagonist's personal bodyguard. Chase is very impressed by that because knights usually come from noble families. Introducing himself more properly, Kiri says his surname is Baron, which makes Chase even more worried. It's a name passed down in the royal family of Sakurai for generations. It means the hero who will never disappear. Back to our protagonist. He's still trying to figure out the motive for that visit. He's worried about the future and a possible war. Maybe his efforts were in vain. He still doesn't know why Blanche started a war in his past life. Still stuck in those thoughts, he's interrupted by his brother. Blanche wants to know why a distant prince would want to talk to our protagonist. To make matters worse, Gallian looks clearly tired. So, Blanche asks what his brother would do if something he wanted badly was already claimed by someone else. Blanche says he's not in the habit of taking what doesn't belong to him. Gallian asks what he would do if it was something he really needed. Would he still limit himself to that moral code? Even after thinking for a bit, Blanche doesn't change his answer. Our boy has to admit he was really shaken by that meeting. In the current version of Blanche, who doesn't know what's going to happen, Blanche demands an answer from our protagonist now. Using magic to block the sound, Gallian remembers that his brother had asked who he really was. A question that had worried our protagonist a lot. Gallian says time in this world has turned back 10 years, leaving his brother stunned. And he used to be Chase's brother. That was the truth that was revealed. It's time for Ellen to talk to his disciple. His secret has been revealed to one more person, and that makes the mage seriously worried. Gallian says he didn't give many explanations either, just that he's Chase's brother, and now he's Blanche's brother. Ellen is still very uneasy about the situation, and wants to know what things look like. Now, our boy has a request for Yura, and he's counting on his master's cooperation. There's one thing he can't stop thinking about: Randall, his other brother, and all the priests who have visited the kingdom recently. It's not a simple coincidence. Outside, Blanche has finally met Chase. He asks what he's doing in the palace garden. Chase says he has free time, and the king has given him permission to walk in the garden, but it seems Blanche doesn't like that. Still, Blanche says he's been misunderstood. He's really curious, and wants to know the reason for the visit. It seems Chase isn't there just to talk to the Archmage. Chase had heard he would have to face the person responsible for Valcon. Changing the subject like that has surprised Blanche. He didn't think the information had spread so fast. Very seriously, Chase asks if that division will be the prince's power base. Observing that reaction, Blanche has finally understood everything. Chase must have done something in that future version through those mages. Realizing that Chase knows more than he lets on, Valcon still makes one thing clear to him. He serves the protagonist. Still worried, Chase says that for the prince's own sake, he better be right about this. Back to our boy reading a letter. The butler he was investigating seems to have no records at all. While he's thinking about it, he's told the party will soon be announced. Since he needs to come to a conclusion quickly, Gallian asks his butler for help. Aladdin has sent 30 priests there. He's sure his brother Randall is involved. The butler says they are there for the king's birthday celebration, but the number of priests is too high. So, there must be another reason. That really makes the butler rack his brain. And our boy realizes he still doesn't understand anything. However, the boy says they shouldn't even be able to send that many priests. Tanzil had a tough time with the dynasties that year. They needed help from the kingdom, and now they are repaying the favor by sending precious priests. Gallian realizes that whenever there are floods, there are also epidemics. That country must need healers immediately. Still, sending priests to the king's birthday. Now it all seems pretty clear. Those people can't be real priests. After that conversation, Blanche becomes quite lost in thought. In the castle corridors, he finally meets Hina. He asks if the cat is stuck, telling her to back up a bit. He says he'll help. He ends up closing the door even more, and tells her he'll take care of the cat that day. It was Blanche's room. And besides the cat, our protagonist was also inside. Callion went there to ask his brother if he was going to the party that night. Blanche asks what his dear brother has planned for the day. Callion says there are 30 fake priests in the place. The princes enter the great hall together. For the nobles, it's strange to see them united. Maybe that's the way they found to show their allies. It's clear they are challenging Randall through that display of unity. For our protagonist, that's more than enough. If his brother is still planning something, he won't be able to carry it out. Blanche asks if that's what our boy wants. Callion says, that's just the first step. He also notices our protagonist seems to be looking for someone among the guests. It seems someone is missing. Even Curie has been investigating outside, and our protagonist is sure it's not a coincidence. The guard's job is to follow Randall as soon as he leaves the party. The prince moves protected by his guards. So, Curie has to be very stealthy and discreet. Luckily for him, a noble couple is hiding in the bushes for some fun. They apologize for what happened, and Randall continues with his schedule as usual. Another person who needs to be investigated is the prince's right-hand man, the guy with the glasses. Curie just needs to find out one thing in this mission. His presence is finally noticed. Those men have felt his killing intent. They are not priests. Just as our boy suspected, they are knights. And he has come to confront his brother about it.